says Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner's executive order forbidding state agencies from collecting fair share payments from state employees is blatantly illegal. The anti-union billionaire governor can't get the Democrat-controlled legislature to attack unions like this, so he's trying the executive order route. Lynch says that Rauner's scheme to strip the rights of state workers and weaken their unions is a blatantly illegal abuse of power. AFSCME says it and all of organized labor will stand together with those who believe in democracy to overturn Rauner's order.
People need to understand, especially maybe women in the nursing field, they need to understand that it's okay to stand up and you can win. You can. People think you can't against a big industry. To be able to advocate for justice is one of the most important things I think any of us can do.
Ann Waite, the Ohio union nurse who just won a civil jury award of more than $2 million for being illegally fired and defamed for pro-union activity. Waite had been a nurse at Affinity Medical Center for 36 years when she was fired 2 years ago for supporting the National Nurse Organizing Committee's effort to organize. It took a year for the NLRB and a federal judge to order her reinstated, and it took another year to get the civil suit judgment clearing her name. The boss didn't just fire her for union organizing, they also tried to get her license revoked. Waite had her job back, but she wanted her name back, and she wanted justice.
They had compiled all these untruths from so many people and sent this information to the Board of Nursing, and which made it defamation with malice. I needed my name cleared. It was about reputation. It was about clearing my name. So even though the Labor Relations Board and the federal judge put me back to work, I needed to pursue it in the civil court.
Ann Waite's fellow RNs are currently still trying to negotiate a contract at Affinity Medical Center, owned by the Tennessee-based Community Health Systems chain. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker is violating federal campaign law. That's the charge in a formal complaint filed against Walker with the Federal Elections Commission by the American Democracy Legal Fund. The complaint alleges that Walker is exceeding campaign contribution limits through Our American Revival, political organization created by Walker to test the waters for a presidential run. The complaint charges that Walker is raising and spending legal contribution limits and source restrictions of the Federal Election Campaign Act of 1971. The American Democracy Legal Fund wants the FEC to enjoin Walker's organization from further violations and to impose the maximum fines allowed. This newscast made possible in part through support from the United Steelworkers Union. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I could drag it into the bathroom and drown in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead. Make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
This town gonna be here long after I'm gone. East side, west side, people don't surrender. They've been down, but they still rock on. Oh, and this time is my time. All right, love or hate, it don't matter. 'Cause I'm gonna stand and fight. This time is my time. She got her ups and downs, but love or hate, it don't matter. 'Cause this is my time.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks for being here today on the big program. Back in the studio after a couple of days away. Over the weekend, we spent time at the Pennsylvania Progressive Summit. Also yesterday, Monday and Tuesday, we spent a good bit of time at the Pennsylvania AFL CIO's biannual, I believe it is, legislative conference, where they talk about the issues that are going to be popping up, things working people should be paying attention to. We had a great time there talking with folks, and and they really kind of got an idea of where things are going to be going in the next 3 months. Really are going to tell a lot of where we end up. But today we're going to talk a little bit about the wine and spirit shops. Evidently, that's back, and we're not going around the fringes this time. We're going full frontal assault, sell off the whole thing. And you knew this was going to happen. You absolutely knew that the Republicans were going to come back with, we want it all. And we're going to do our stuff first. I mean, they were very honest about it. Me first. Me first. You know, women will remember that. We'll think of that one. But, you know, basically what you've got is you've got a bunch of male, pale, and stale old white guys who, you know, they used to get in their way, pushing their way to the front of the line. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in all of this debate. So that's kind of interesting. Before I get into all of that, you know, sad day, I guess, right? Jon Stewart, big news. Everybody I talk to, it's Jon Stewart. Yeah. Will liberalism ever be the same without him? Look, I love Jon Stewart, but, you know, I think life will go on. I think there will be someone to take his place. And look, 15 years of doing that gig is got to be taxing, especially when you see that. Honestly, I mean, the country is just going insane. And, you know, you can sit there and you know, and do what he does every night, and he does a great job of it. But when the sea tide seems so overwhelming, when you're looking at all of being completely surrounded by insanity in a media culture, I get it. And, you know, I've had those conversations here at this program. You know, we struggle mightily to grow into other areas, as do all of the programs like ours. You know, I talk to a number of people across the country who do this and are fighting the good fight and have the people's message. You know, good luck getting corporate America to buy into we want better wages for workers. Get in line to get corporate America to buy into the idea that we need to raise taxes on them to pay for the infrastructure that they use. They've gotten so used to this free rider mentality that don't worry, those poor people will just suffer with it. Or, you know, they'll just be happy with crummy wages. That you're just not going to get them to buy into we have a different vision. Things have to completely collapse before that'll happen again, in my opinion, much like it did during the Depression. And, you know, I get this all the time. Well, you know, you do a great show. You're one of my favorite. I listen all the time on the podcast, right? I listen all the time on the app or at the website or all of these different other ways of participating in the program. I listen all the time, but why can't I turn that little switch on and hear you across the country like we can hear with the Hannitys and the Limbaughs and the rest of them? And the reality is it comes down to the revenue. It comes down to the money. And, you know, one of the things, and this has, I guess, been part of my struggle, is I despise the type of programming that go, hey, with their hand out going, hey, give me money. I just think that's the wrong approach. Now, there are some that do, and I have a number of people who make donations to the program that helps us keep going, and I appreciate that. But to constantly be berating people, hey, you know, give me money, because I can't get corporate America to buy into the message. And I've had a number of people say, well, you know, Rick, you need to mainstream the program. This way you can get corporate America to come and fund you. And I go, you know, well, you know what that looks like? That looks like Bill O'Reilly. That looks like Fox News. That looks like them. It looks like a watered down version of CNN even, because they're still beholden to the advertiser. And until we find that model, and I truly believe that model is the internet, you know, where people are, everyone's got a smartphone, everyone's, you know, tuned in, lettered in, whatever. And that's where you share this information. And that's where we do very well. And my struggle is, and I had this conversation yesterday that sent me just, you know, completely, really off the deep end. Of, well, you know, how come you can't be on my local station? And I said, well, you know, the reality is there's a couple. One, most talk radio stations are formatted. They have right-wing crazy from morning till night. And to break that up would break up their sales ability. What they're selling is we're a network that's going to basically parrot the right-wing message, the corporate message, because I almost hate saying right-wing message anymore because it's now turning, and I said this about 10 years ago. What's going to happen is you're seeing all these right-wing cranks who are pushing these social issues, and they'll start to move towards the real direction, which is the corporate direction. The corporatists will win. And that's the problem with what we're seeing today. Understand, and to bring it back to Pennsylvania, understand that the whole push for the wine and spirit shops is not people driven. It's not you. It's not me. I've yet to find anyone who says this is a seriously important issue. Really, I haven't. I've had a lot of people say, I'd like to buy a 6-pack in the grocery store every once in a while. That would be nice. But that's not what this is. And maybe you put a bottle of wine in the grocery store and people will go, I wouldn't mind that. That'd be okay. I don't see anybody clamoring in the streets for it. I see people in the streets all the time for minimum wage increases, for the right to join a union, for all kinds of right now, there's steel workers in the streets striking for safety because they don't want to blow up on the job. Those are the real important things. Selling off the liquor stores? Really? That's the top priority that the Republican Party in this state came out with? Really? Understand the vote is going to be scheduled in the House for February 23rd, which is only a couple of short days away, because this is going to be a hostage situation. This is going to be the budgeting trick. We're going to, if you don't give us privatization, we don't give you a budget. So, that's horse trading, but this is their fetish. They want to sell this off. Now, the thought is the $500 million. Actually, I shouldn't say $500 million. More than $500 million. It was, I think, $526 million last year that the wine and spirit shops, the Liquor Control Board paid back into the coffers here in Pennsylvania. So it's over $500 million. They want to risk that on the quote-unquote free market. In fact, then they want to give away that 1%, which it just blows my mind. We're going to think about all the money that goes out in taxes and sales, and we're going to give 1% of that away. That's not nonsensical and idiotic. But hey, what do you expect? But according to Dave Reed, this is going to be one of the priorities, and they're pushing for. And Dave Reed is the majority leader. His caucus is going to run it. They're going to run with it. It's going to look just like the last one, just like the last failed one from 2 years ago. So I guess good. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. They don't learn. But what's frustrating to me is here we have to hear the parroting of the mainstream media, which, understand, when you hear the newspapers telling you about privatization, they want it. Why? Bringing it back to what I was talking about. It's about the advertisers. The state wine and spirit shops don't have to advertise much. They do a little bit around the holidays, but there aren't entire full-page ads in every section going, buy booze, buy booze. It's not there. It will be once we privatize it. There'll be billboards, Joe's Booze Shack. And it won't be Joe's. It'll be Walmart's Booze Shack. But, you get the point. So when you hear them say how wonderful it'll be for them, yes, it's about the money, and lots and lots and lots of it. And there's part of me that says, it's part of this education process that we wake up to the reality that follow the money really means follow the money. Who benefits? Cui bono. Who benefits? To whose benefit? Not yours, not mine. Not our kids, but to the big corporations. The ones who funnel all their profits out of the state through the Delaware loophole, those people. And I shouldn't even say people because it's infuriating me that I'm now calling a corporation a person. Thank you, Citizens United. So the question is what do we do? One of my answers has always been, one, from a purely self-interest standpoint, you got to share the program. You got to tell your friends, you got to tell your neighbors, you got to push the program out, get people calling in, get people participating. We have to have these kind of group meetings. We have to have these strategy sessions, if you will, to where we have information and we're able to go and fight back. Because the right wing, masterful. They've trained their minions. A minimum wage increase, you mutter out job loss, teenagers, you muddle out, free market. Even though we know all that's bull, it's all bunk, but we still buy it. Sad. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Can't ever change your mind. So think before you die. Whoa, think before you die.
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. Did you work a 40-hour work week this week? If you did, this is an important day for you. On this day in labor history, the year was 1926. And on this day, labor leader Benjamin Gold began what became a general strike of all furriers in New York City. Benjamin Gold was born in Russia and immigrated with his family to the United States when he was 12 years old. He worked at several jobs before entering work in the fur industry. He became active in the Furrier Union at only 14 years old. In 1926, Gold helped lead some 12,000 workers, including Jewish, Greek, and African-American furriers, on strike. One of their core demands was a 40-hour work week. Despite numerous acts of police brutality against the workers, constant red baiting, and dwindling strike funds, the workers held strong. Ben Gold helped raise money for the strikers, visiting other union halls throughout the city to sell 40-hour Liberty bonds. He helped get the New York State Federation of Labor and other unions in the city to support the cause. He argued that the 40-hour work week was important for all workers in New York and across the nation. With this support, Gold organized a rally at Madison Square Garden. The labor supporters filled the garden, making it the largest labor meeting in New York up to that time. After 17 long weeks, the furriers were successful, winning their first contract that recognized a 40-hour, 5-day work week. They also won a 25% pay increase, union inspection of shops, an employer contribution to an unemployment insurance fund, a paid day off, and equal assignments of work without favoritism. These brave workers helped to set the standard for the work week of today. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
This is the Media Matters Minute. I'm Coleman Lowndes. The Federal Communications Commission is expected to soon rule on net neutrality, whether to give internet providers such as Comcast and Verizon greater control over internet access for users. On his radio show, Rush Limbaugh made the bogus suggestion that net neutrality is part of a secret plot to undermine Limbaugh and Fox News, as well as control the media.
You've got the Fox News, Rush Limbaugh folks, and then you've got the MSNBC folks. But the point is that the technology which brings the world to us allows us to narrow our point of view. And now that there's not a monopoly in the news that controls the narrative every day, the left doesn't quite know how to deal with it other than to try to control it. Hello, net neutrality as one example.
But as Tim Carr, Senior Director of Strategy at Free Press, explained on SiriusXM's Media Matters Radio, more on this and other stories, please visit MediaMatters.org.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, Visit AFSME13.org. We are AFSME.
Standing tall against a multinational corporate agenda. The Rick Smith Show.
All the things you want are real. You have you to complete, and there is no deal.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. So Pennsylvania's official unemployment rate stands right about 4.8%. That's a little bit lower than the national average of 5.6%. You go, wow, we're so much better than the rest of the country. Aren't we wonderful? We must be lighting the world on fire. But you go, well, wait a second. Over the last 4 years, job growth dead last. So maybe it isn't that the economy's doing all that well. Maybe there's something in how we calculate unemployment that would give us the much lower number. Just kind of a thought. And, I think back to 2011, 2010, 2011, Scott Perry was in the House of Representatives here at PA pushing his House Bill 960, as I remember, that was going to change who got unemployment benefits. And in fact, I remember the Penn Live people said that Perry's plan to rejigger the unemployment would save us $632 million annually. And how was he going to do it? He's going to steal from the unemployed and change how that works. Now with it being cold out, now folks are going, we've been excluded. So here to talk a little bit about this great change that saved us $632 million annually is our good friend, attorney Erwin Aronson. Erwin, thanks for taking time for us.
Good to be here, Rick. How are you?
I am good. Unemployment's down 4.8%, below the national average. It's a good thing, huh?
Well, no, let me help you with this. Unemployment isn't down. Unemployment numbers, statistics are down. And there's a reason for that. There's a bunch of reasons for that. That Scott Perry legislation that you mentioned when you were introducing this segment changed in a very basic and fundamental way a bunch of methods by which people became eligible for benefits under this remedial statute, the unemployment insurance law. The statute that stands for the proposition that everybody who applies for benefits is presumed to be eligible unless there is a specific provision in the statute saying otherwise. There were many changes in 2011.
So basically what you're saying is innocent until proven guilty, and now we've changed that to guilty until you prove yourself innocent.
Well, it's even worse than that. It's not just innocent until proven guilty. Innocence is neutral, okay? The unemployment insurance law is one of a number of laws that have been consistently interpreted by the courts going back all the way to the early portion of the 20th century. Workers' compensation is another, where in return for giving up some very significant rights, working men and women are presumed to be eligible. So not presumed to merely be innocent, but presumed to be entitled. Okay? And there's logic to that. Every worker in Pennsylvania pays for unemployment insurance really out of their own pockets.
Right.
And it's unemployment insurance. People make the mistake of calling it unemployment compensation. It's not that. It's insurance. It's a policy for which we workers pay every week out of every paycheck. And in Pennsylvania, we uniquely, we pay for it in two ways. The first way is that we give up wages that become the contributions, the premiums, if you will, that our employers pay. Now employers pay that based on a formula, but it only applies to the first roughly $9,000, a hair over $9,000, that a worker earns per year in the employ of a particular employer. But then Pennsylvania is one of only 3 states in which employees, workers, also pay a tax, and the workers pay a tax on every single penny that they earn. So every time a worker does indeed get a pay raise, it increases the amount that she or he pays into the unemployment insurance system in Pennsylvania. So we've paid this forward And we've paid it forward going back all the way to 1935 when this law was passed. And in return for paying it forward, the law is written in a fashion, and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has consistently interpreted it to say that because this is a remedial statute aimed at ameliorating some of the most difficult and socially destructive impacts of unemployment, that people come to the system as claimants presumed to be eligible for benefits. And the only way we can take away their benefit eligibility or diminish their benefit eligibility or reduce their eligibility or restrict their benefit eligibility, if there is something specifically in the law that prohibits them from being eligible for benefits. So that's the starting point. The law itself, and this again goes all the way back to 1935, only has really three broadly based disqualifications from eligibility. One is if you voluntarily quit your job without a necessitous or compelling reason. Another is if you are a participant directly in a strike, a work stoppage that is caused by the workers as opposed to a work stoppage imposed as a lockout by the employer. And the third is if you engage as a claimant in willful misconduct, and it was the willful misconduct that led to your discharge or termination from work. Everyone else comes to the system with a presumption of eligibility. What happened in 2011 with Scott Perry's legislation, that was really not Scott Perry's legislation at all. It was Governor Corbett's legislation.
And worse than that, I think it was the American Legislative Exchange Council's legislation.
ALEC had their fingers in it. Corbett had his fingers in it. The Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry had their fingers in it. The National Federation of Independent Business had their fingers in it. They did a number of very, very cynical things that result in a whole bunch of people becoming ineligible for benefits. The first one they did was they made it try to sound like it was a good thing. They increased the minimum benefit. The minimum benefit had been around $75 a week, and they increased it to about $125 a week. And that sounds like they gave somebody a raise, except what they meant was that anybody who would have qualified for the benefit between $75 and $125 would no longer be qualified. So they would no longer be eligible. So that was strike one.
So there's a way to cut that unemployment rate down a little bit further.
And of course, if you are not counted because you're not eligible, then you're not unemployed according to those statistics.
Nice.
Indeed, those statistics get skewed in two ways. One is that. The other is that everybody who is in the military is counted as being employed, okay, in the state from which they come. So that increases the employment numbers. And if you take that out of the picture, because people in the military are in a different class altogether, if we take that out of the employment numbers, our job production numbers that you referenced earlier get even worse. So if we take the people at the very bottom and make them ineligible, then they, of course, don't count in the unemployment numbers. Number two is, if you recall, and I'm sure you do, a little over a year ago, the federal extended unemployment compensation benefit program that provided additional benefits during periods of high and protracted unemployment was not readopted by the Congress. So that was another huge swath of people who had previously been eligible, who became ineligible and fall out of the calculation yet again. And then we have this other huge change that the Perry-Corbett Chamber legislation imposed. And that is something where they decided that people who earn significant portions of their annual earnings during the course of a compressed period of time would no longer be eligible. And here's how this works. When you apply for unemployment insurance benefits in Pennsylvania, the earnings that count are the earnings you had in the first 4 of the last 5 completed calendar quarters. It's a calculation known as your base year.
Right.
And so the current quarter doesn't count, and the one immediately before it doesn't count. So the wages that they're looking at are really a year and a half old. What the Perry Chamber Corbett legislation did was to say that in order to show all of us honest and honorable Pennsylvanians that you're actually attached to the workforce, you need to demonstrate not only what your wages were for the year, that base year I just described, but you also have to show that you earned at least 49.5% of the entire year's wages outside of your high quarter. So if you happen to be a construction worker that works on, for example, a powerhouse outage and ends up working 7 12-hour days a week for 3 months, you will have a very high quarter. And it may well be due to structural unemployment, due to seasonal unemployment, because we can't, for example, pour concrete when the weather is below freezing, that you don't have weather in certain periods of the year, don't have work, in certain periods of the year. But if you cannot, based upon this 2011 law, demonstrate that at least 49.5% of your annual wages came from outside of your high quarter, then you are ineligible. Now, it used to be, and this is another piece of the change on that they imposed, it used to be that when you had a very high quarter and relatively lower in relation to that quarter annual wages, there were 4 steps you could step down. So instead of being eligible for the maximum benefit, you'd be eligible for a little bit less, and maybe even one step below that, a little bit less yet, and maybe even one step below that, a little bit less yet. But they eliminated 3 of those 4 steps in the step-down procedure. At the same time, they imposed this 49.5% number. So recognizing, if you will, that all of this was imposed actually starting in calendar year 2012, after it was adopted in 2011, people who had already been on a protracted period of unemployment during what would be their base year, that would have taken us all the way back to 2010 and 2009 in some instances. As everybody recognizes, unemployment was very high after the commencement of the Great Recession, starting in the summer and fall of 2008.
Right.
We have a bunch of things happen simultaneously. We have a bunch of people who had been previously eligible for benefits, again disqualified, and these at this time were high wage earners, not low wage earners, and people who were very deeply attached to the economy. But on top of that, they fall out of the numbers. They fall through the cracks. They don't count for unemployment statistical purposes either. And to make matters worse, when the unemployment rate drops, then the state and federal triggers for emergency benefits and for extended benefits evaporate. And so people have even less access to benefits because the law initially says that in general, people are entitled to 26 times their weekly benefit rate. And oh, by the way, the Perry-Corbett Chamber legislation changed that as well. They created a concept of a variable duration of benefits. So for the first time since 1935, starting in calendar year 2012, people who qualified for benefits weren't always entitled to 26 weeks of benefits. What they became entitled was no more than 26 weeks of benefits, but maybe as few as 0, and they would only qualify for the number of weeks of benefits that were the equivalent of the number of weeks in their base year that I've described before, in which they had earned in excess of $100, and now that this year has been raised to $115, so they have a credit week. And the Corbett Labor and Industry Department was doing something particularly cynical if you happen to be employed by more than one employer in the course of a week, which is the case for many itinerant workers, for many construction workers, for now many child care workers and home care workers. They would only count your wages from the employer that paid you the most in that week. They wouldn't add them up. So people found they weren't getting credit weeks. And that became particularly significant because if you didn't have at least 16 credit weeks, they disqualified you altogether. But if you had between 16 and 26 credit weeks, you're only eligible for the number of weeks of benefits that is the equal to the number of credit weeks you have. And again, when you become ineligible, you fall off the rolls, you stop counting for the statistics.
And thus, here we are, 4.8% unemployment. The unemployment number But as I think everybody understands, it's significantly higher, and now we know partially why.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right, and it's very, very cynical because it has a compounding effect. That 49.5% number, I'll give you some additional statistics. They represented to us when they were proposing it that they would save $50 million a year from the unemployment insurance trust fund.
Save. I love that word, save.
Save. What they neglected to mention, we had pointed it out, but they tried to sweep it under the rug, was $50 million every year. Well, when somebody becomes ineligible for benefits this year, they don't become eligible for benefits again next year. So that's $50 million in the next year that's taken out of the hides of a new group of people. And in the third year, it's 50 more out of the hides of yet another new group of people. So they estimated that would be like 31 to 40,000 people a year. So that means by the second year, we're looking at 80,000 people. And by the third year, 120,000 people. All who fall out of the statistics, but all who also are having to make choices between medicine and milk and sugar and shoes. And just to sort of tie the ribbon around this package, in return for all of this that was done to Pennsylvania workers, the Pennsylvania workers who remain employed, the taxpayers, if you will, guaranteed the largest single piece of borrowing in the history of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. They borrowed, by way of a bond issue, $4.6 billion with a B dollars to pay off a debt that the business community had accumulated in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for its unemployment compensation obligations, because the business community was continuously underpaying on those obligations. And let me explain why before you ask the question. In 1984, the taxable wage base on which employers pay their share of the unemployment insurance premium was set at about $8,400 a year, the first $8,400 that any worker earned in covered employment.
1984.
That's 1984. In 1984, that number represented roughly 50% of the statewide average weekly wage, times 12 months a year. So, if we would have merely kept pace with inflation and had the taxable wage base on which employers pay their share of the unemployment insurance premium, by 2011, when this legislation was being passed, the taxable wage base would have been around $21,000 to $22,000. That would have meant that it was equal to what it had been in 1984.
And the question then becomes, would we have had to borrow $4.6 billion to bail out the fund after the Bush collapse in 2008?
We would not only not have had to borrow 4.6, we wouldn't have borrowed 3.6, 2.6, 1.6, 0.6, or 0. We would have had a positive balance with that alone. But because the business community consistently and always repudiated, opposed, and fought keeping their payments level with inflation, the fund became bankrupt, and then the fund engaged in very heavy-duty borrowing. And the bond issue was issued because the business community was told by the government of the United States of America that we're going to start to charge you interest on the loan that you took for not paying your fair share.
Crisis.
And so now we had a crisis that resulted in us having to guarantee their debt, we taxpayers having to guarantee their debt so that we could pay off their loan on their behalf. And that would then allow them to avoid having to pay interest and maybe even some penalties for not having paid down their debt. And in return for guaranteeing their debt for their accumulated dalliances, they cut our benefits and our eligibility for the unemployment insurance on which our employers have paid 100%, and we workers have paid 100% of the premiums. Now, this is like you having a life insurance policy for your entire life, and when you pass away, them going to your heirs and saying, well, we'd like to pay you, but we changed the rules last year. We forgot to tell you. And Rick had to have died on a Thursday in order for benefits. We still collect the premium, but we're not going to burden you with having to collect that money from us. And in return, now that he's gone, you don't have to pay the premium anymore.
And if I remember correctly, on top of that, we also gave the employers a tax cut on the rate that they were paying, and didn't raise that taxable number very much above the 1984 number. I think you said $8,400 in 1984. It's up to, I guess it goes up to $10,000 by 2019.
It goes up to 10,000 by 2019. Right now, it's around 9,000. But we did some other nice little things too for us. I was about to give you the exclamation point that you just gave to me, because they did get a tax break in return for this. And on top of getting a tax break, they also froze the maximum benefit for a few years. So our benefit that was tied to inflation was frozen. And they did a number of other things like that in that statute. Also imposed on people a requirement that they engage in what they call an active search for work, which means that when you go for an interview, you have to convince the employer with whom you're having an interview to fill out a form so you can prove that you actually went there. And you know how many employers that are not hiring workers, particularly at the height of the recession, were prepared to spend their time and their money filling out forms for unemployed workers.
Yeah.
But if, of course, you don't have the capacity to demonstrate at least 3 active searches for work in the course of every week, then you also get to be deemed ineligible.
It's amazing stuff. And you know, the last thing I want to hit on this is, you know, the reward that Scott Perry got was he's now in Congress. So you look at this horrible thing for workers, and the reward is he moves up.
Yep, you got it. You win. You win.
Something seriously wrong with that. Is there anything we can do now to fix this? Is this a done deal? Do we suffer like this till 2019?
This is a done deal, but there is legislation being circulated in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives right now to correct some of this. It doesn't correct all of it, but there's a proposal in to address that 49.5% issue and some of the corollary issues associated with that 49.5% issue.
How'd they pick that number? Before you go on, how'd they pick 49%?
I think that it was, the short answer is I don't know. I think that it was just results oriented. They looked at what the claim history had been in Pennsylvania at that point, and they wanted to hit a target number, and they indeed picked the number that allowed them to hit a target that would take $50 million a year out of the hands of working men and women. And by the way, I think that it's important for me to mention that when people become eligible for unemployment insurance benefits, it's not as if they're tucking that money away or using it to take a trip to Bermuda. It's paying bills locally. It's buying shoes for the kids when they start school. It's paying the electric bill or a part of it. It's paying for rent. It's making the weekly or monthly payments on the refrigerator or the washing machine. It is pumping money into the Pennsylvania economy in a big way. And when we take it out of the economy, what are we causing? More unemployment.
And the sad thing is we're going to allow it to be eroded by inflation over the next decade because I understand it's frozen until 2019, which means that, you know, what we were getting in 2012 will be significantly less in 2019.
Yeah, and you need to understand as well that when you are eligible for any particular dollar amount of benefits, that amount is fixed in your claim for your claim year. So you don't get a raise if it bridges more than 1 year, and you don't get an increase because the statewide average wage has increased, and you don't get an increase because the cost of living has increased. You're fixed. You're permanent. We have a provision in the law that provides for dependent coverage. It's $5 a week. The last time that was addressed was 1972, Rick.
Wow. Yeah. Well, what happens if you have 2 kids? What happens if you have 3? You get $5.
You get 5. Well, that's not exactly true. You get 5 altogether maximum. If you're married and have a dependent spouse, you really get 3. But if you have kids, you get another couple.
No, well,
But that-
still,
but that
I don't
has
know that
not-
$5. I don't know that $5 a week is going to feed the kid. Sorry.
Well, yes, you do know that. You know the answer to that. That doesn't feed a kid an order of French fries at McDonald's, I don't think. But this is it, and this is the government that has been touted by those who pursue it as helping people. Thank goodness Governor Tom Wolf understands that the way you grow an economy is to have working people have money in their pockets that they can spend so that they contribute to our communities, so that they can pay their property taxes, so they pay sales taxes, so they pay income taxes, and so that they can also buy a movie ticket once in a while, or get the kids a new pair of sneakers for school, or, maybe imagine this, jump in the car and take a ride somewhere to the local shopping center where they might actually pick up a couple of things.
Heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid. Heaven forbid.
Well, we've got a lot of work to do. And Erwin, I appreciate you taking time for us and filling us in on this very important issue. I know we've got more work to do on it. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Thanks so much. Our good friend, attorney Erwin Aronson. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. Come to talk.
Now who'd have thought that after all, something as simple as rock and roll would save us all? Now who'd have thought that after all, it was rock and roll?
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, this is your World in Tooth. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, with the Talk Radio News Service. United Nations reform. There are a few issues talked about so much, but which are acted on so little. After all, why is the UN the way it is? For an experiment in world government, the status quo is about as enshrined as it gets. The UN Security Council, for instance, structures its power around 5 of World War II's victors, not the largest economies, populations, or militaries of the 21st century. Yet the current prospects for reform are bleak, with reform drives by both the Secretary General and the members of the General Assembly seemingly going nowhere. Enter the Elders, a group of 12 thought leaders from around the world established by Nelson Mandela. Its members include former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan and Jimmy Carter. Over the weekend, the group called for 4-point UN reform, including expanding the Security Council, forcing its veto-wielding members to publicly explain their vetoes, lending a greater voice to civil society in consultations, and opening up the election process for the Secretary General.
Most of the elders have had high positions too in the UN.
Leslie Ann Knight is the CEO of the Elders.
It's because of their passionate love and belief in the United Nations that they have launched this encouraging statement around strengthening and making the UN fit for purpose.
Knight says the Elders aren't debating reform in the abstract. They're keenly aware of human suffering around the world and think reform could reduce that suffering.
If the Security Council had not been quite so deadlocked through veto use by the P5 powers, I think the elders firmly believe more progress could have been made in bringing peace to both Syria, and we may not have got to the situation we are now in with the Ukraine.
For more global news headlines, visit talkradionews.com.
After the Supreme Court's democracy-mugging decree that corporations can dump unlimited amounts of their shareholders' money into our election campaigns, a guy named Larry sent an email to me that perfectly summed up what had just been done to us. Big money has plucked our eagle. Thanks to the court's freakish Citizens United ruling, the Koch brothers have amassed an unprecedented $900 million electioneering fund, making them the godfathers of Tea Party Republicanism. Thus, such presidential wannabes as Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, and Scott Walker are shamelessly scurrying to kiss the Koch ring and pledge fealty to the Brotherhood's extremist plutocratic agenda. But big money is not only corrupting candidates, it's also greatly diminishing voter participation in what has become a made-for-TV farce. The biggest chunk of cash spent by Koch Inc. will go right into a mind-numbing squall of ads. They will not explain why we should vote for so-and-so, but instead will be nauseatingly negative attack ads, trashing the candidates the Koch syndicate opposes. Worse, voters will not even be informed that the Kochs paid for this garbage, since the Supreme Court says they can run secret campaigns, laundering their money through front groups to keep voters from knowing what special interests are really behind the attacks. This is Jim Hightower saying, we saw the impact of secret, unrestricted corporate money in last year's midterm elections. It produced a blight of negativity, a failure of the system to address the people's real needs, an upchuck factor that kept nearly 2/3 of the people from voting, a rising alienation of the many from the political process, and a Congress owned by corporate elites. The Koch machine spent about $400 million to get those results 2 years ago. This time, they'll spend more than twice that.
To get more of Jim Hightower's populist take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to, visit www.hightowerlowdown.org.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. So yesterday I brought up the Staples story. You may remember I brought up evidently this is what's been going on at Staples. If you work they have a new rule that if you work more than 24 hours, you're fired. No more. And everyone with a sane, rational thought goes, well, 25 hours, they're trying to hold down people from getting to that next threshold that gets them health care. To where the company would then be responsible to do something. A large corporation like Staples, who could afford it, but chooses not to. What they said is, we don't want to pay it, so we're gonna set up a situation where we got a bunch of part-time people. One of the questions that I asked yesterday was, what then happens if you end up having a situation like we talked about in Philadelphia, where the woman in the woman they found dead in Philly was working at 4 Dunkin' Donuts, 4 of these donut shops. And I asked the question at the time, is it for the same employer? Were they for 2 different franchisees? And no one ever, I was never able to find that information. And to be honest, I didn't go down there and go knocking on doors. But, that's an interesting question. Did you have this woman working 20 hours at each of these four places? Totaling 80 hours, and then she's only getting paid straight time for 80 hours, thus being robbed of 40 hours of overtime. And, I've asked that question a number of times and haven't gotten really an answer. Well, yesterday, Bill sends me this story from New York. The Attorney General, who I like, Eric Schneiderman, went after a Papa Johnny's owner, Papa Johnny's, Papa Johnny, the guy on TV who better pizza, better ingredients, lower wages, screwing my workers. Evidently, this guy owns a number of locations, 7 of them in the Brooklyn and Queens area. And he's been cheating his employees, according to this report. In fact, what Schneiderman said is this Papa John's franchisee brazenly violated the law, shaving employees' hours and avoiding paying overtime by various means, including giving managerial-sounding titles such as head driver. I mean, this really goes into some of the things that Bernie Sanders talked about over the weekend, and we talked about last week. This idea that you're management now, we've given you a nameplate and a title, and you're still making 18, 20, 23. I think it's 23,000 you have to make. Before the overtime, before they go, oh, you're not in management. But I look at this and I go, somebody's paying attention. So they're going after this company who's basically screwing these people. And one of the parts in it, Schneiderman says, look, we've got to look at these franchisees to see if you've got people working at 2 or 3 or 4 of them. Working 10 hours, 20 hours, and being cheated out of overtime. Honestly, I'm just stopped. Somebody is paying it. Maybe Schneiderman listens to the program. I'm not sure. Because, I've been screaming about this for a while. And at some point, you have to go, this wage theft has to stop. I think about myself. I can be honest about this. I have never in my working life. I got cheated a couple times as a teenager, and that was because I was stupid and didn't know any better. But as an adult in the working world, from the time I got out of college until now, I have never been cheated out of wages. And I'll be honest, it's not because I'm really brilliant. It has everything to do with the fact that I was a union member all those years. And that, you know what? I'll fight you for point one. And I used to. I filed a grievance on every time they tried to cheat me out of a digit. And that's what union members do. Look, we're entitled to our pay, and we fight for that. Just as easily as a company will take it away, you should be fighting to make sure that you get it. And I look at this kind of a screw job. The workers had to know that they were getting the shaft, but they're powerless to do anything about it. And that's the frustrating part of this. It's that powerless feeling that I've talked to so many people who, they cut overtime. I got to work through my break. I talk to people now who work for the company that I drive for on the weekends a day or two. And they say the same thing. Oh, they cheated me out of this. I worked this time and, they're cheating me out. I put in for it. I put in for everything. And the day they cheat me is the day I file on them. But what you've got is people who don't feel that sense of empowerment. Look, that's your money. Just as quickly as I'll take it from you, you got to go fight for it. And you've got to have an attorney general. You've got to have somebody who's going to go, you know what, we're going to fight for this. But more importantly, not just an attorney general. You need to have a collective bargaining agreement at the workplace. You need to have that voice at the job. Now, look, this lawsuit, this suit by the attorney general's office going after the Papa Johnny's franchisee, almost $800,000. You go, oh, $800,000. That'll teach him. No, you got to ask yourself, how much did he get away with? If he owns 7 of these Papa John's locations, and this is almost $800,000, how many years has he been getting away with it? How many people has he screwed over the years when nobody was paying attention? We have given these employers way too much power. Way too much. And for me, it's this, we need to be bringing that back a little bit towards sanity. Now, I'm not talking a massive swing to the other side to where the workers have all the power. No, I'm talking about coming to the table on equal grounds, talking about conditions, talking about wages, talking about these type of wage theft allegations, and then having a government that says these are the bare minimum rules. And the first thing I think we need to do, honestly, is change that management thing. For $23,000 and a nameplate on your shirt, you're now management. You can work unlimited hours. Really? That's idiotic. And it's got to stop. And you can thank George W. Bush for that. But here's the thing. If we don't fight back, they're going to continue to take and take and take and take. Especially when you've got governments across this country. And in the next hour, we're going to talk to somebody from Illinois where their governor is going absolutely ballistic on their workforce. You want to talk about the nuclear option? That's what he's doing. This guy hates. This is one of the billionaires. I mean, this is with the entitled class. This is the people who are going to get them because, oddly enough, a union worker has the right to ask a question. That class doesn't want that. They don't want questioning citizens. They want obedient, compliant worker bees who are going to just walk through the day and go, I'm just glad I have a job. Even if it's crummy, even if it doesn't meet the wage needs, even if it is in unsafe conditions, and even if you're getting screwed constantly. And I got to tell you, I give Eric Schneiderman credit for pursuing this. Good on him. The hope is it doesn't end there. The hope is that he goes after Papa Johnny himself and says, hey, you got to keep your people in check and you're going to be held liable for it. That would be the answer. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Rick Smith Show. Changing America for the better.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. AFSCME Council 31 Executive Director Roberta Lynch says Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner's executive order forbidding state agencies from collecting fair share payments from state employees is blatantly illegal. The anti-union billionaire governor can't get the Democrat-controlled legislature to attack unions like this, so he's trying the executive order route. Lynch says that Rauner's scheme to strip the rights of state workers and weaken their unions is a blatantly illegal abuse of power. AFSCME says it and all of organized labor will stand together with those who believe in democracy to overturn Rauner's order.
People need to understand, especially maybe women in the nursing field, they need to understand that it's okay to stand up and you can win. You can. People think you can't against a big industry. To be able to advocate for justice is one of the most important things I think any of us can do.
Ann Waite, the Ohio union nurse who just won a civil jury award of more than $2 million for being illegally fired and defamed for pro-union activity. Waite had been a nurse at Affinity Medical Center for 36 years when she was fired 2 years ago for supporting the National Nurse Organizing Committee's effort to organize. It took a year for the NLRB and a federal judge to order her reinstated, and it took another year to get the civil suit judgment clearing her name. The boss didn't just fire her for union organizing, they also tried to get her license revoked. Waite had her job back, but she wanted her name back, and she wanted justice.
They had compiled all these untruths from so many people and sent this information to the Board of Nursing, and which made it defamation with malice. I needed my name cleared. It was about reputation. It was about clearing my name. So even though the Labor Relations Board and the federal judge put me back to work, I needed to pursue it in the civil court.
Ann Waite's fellow RNs are currently still trying to negotiate a contract at Affinity Medical Center, owned by the Tennessee-based Community Health Systems chain. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker is violating federal campaign law. That's the charge in a formal complaint filed against Walker with the Federal Elections Commission by the American Democracy Legal Fund. The complaint alleges that Walker is exceeding campaign contribution limits through Our American Revival, a political organization created by Walker to test the waters for a presidential run. The complaint charges that Walker is raising and spending funds that are beyond the legal contribution limits and source restrictions of the Federal Election Campaign Act of 1971. The American Democracy Legal Fund wants the FEC to enjoin Walker's organization from further violations and to impose the maximum fines allowed. This newscast made possible in part through support from the United Steelworkers Union. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
And by the way, what we shouldn't do, I just got to say this, what we shouldn't be doing is trying to take away your rights to bargain for better wages and working together. We shouldn't be doing that.
Well, it's starting again. I turn around friend. I'm moving the people that want to defend human rights, a fair wage, a quick return to decent days. Equality is in play. Workers should organize without haste. Have the vote in your workplace. Work with your manager face to face. Let's go! It's starting again. The change, a new labor rate. Support the EFCA. Let's go! It started again.
I got to tell you, it's amazing what just a couple of short years will do. I mean, at one point we were talking about passing the Employee Free Choice Act, as they're singing about there, giving workers the right to organize and putting some real serious teeth into into employers who try and abuse their workers and harass and intimidate and illegally fire. And look where we are now. Just these short few years, you've got all these crazy right-wing governors across the Midwest and Michigan and Indiana, Ohio, just insane to me. And now one of the most radical of all, this guy in Illinois. who has this to me is the nuclear option. This is we're going. This is all out war in my view. To me, it's a declaration, if you will. And I like what Roberta Lynch, the executive director of AFSCME's Illinois branch, had to say. A blatant illegal use of abuse of power. She said it's crystal clear that by this action that the governor's supposed concern for balancing the state budget is a paper-thin excuse that can't hide his real agenda, which she says is about silencing workers and their unions who stand up for the middle class. Absolutely honest and spot on true, which is why I've asked Larry Spivak, he's regional director for AFSCME Council 31 out there in Illinois, to come talk with us. He's also the president of the Illinois Labor History Society, the good folks who help us with our labor history and too. Larry, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure, Rick.
So, is my assessment of this right? I mean, is this the nuclear option? I mean, is this a declaration of war, if you will?
I think you're spot on. I mean, the war has been waged against the middle class, especially in recent years, by the right wing in a way that goes back to the Gilded Age in a certain way. But it's a declaration of war because he did the press conference. That's Governor Rauner, the billionaire, the day of our first set of negotiations with the state of Illinois. So it's quite amazing, and I guess you'd say it was an all-out assault, and he fired across the bow with big weapons.
Yeah,
that being lots of money.
Yeah, I mean, at first it's this idiotic scheme of right to work zones that we're seeing in Kentucky, where they're doing trying to do this right to work stuff on a countywide basis. Now he's coming up with this zone stuff, and then almost right on the heels of that, this executive order. Which I guess the first question I have, legally, are they able to do that?
Well, there will be a legal response, and saying it is illegal, we think that it clearly is. I mean, it's state law, for crying out loud. There is no this executive order that he's calling it respecting state employees' freedom of speech, but it's outrageous. It's clear. It's a contractual right, which gives it a legal right. It's a state law. It's written into the State Collective Bargaining Act that a Republican governor passed and signed in 1983 and went into effect in 1984. So this issue, it's just a cover to part of the conspiracy to destroy the middle class, very rich, that continue to go after working people. And the only defense for working people is a union that negotiates for everybody, which it effectively does. And even with small numbers of represented workers, we still have the ability to keep many workers with a livable wage, and that's what they're going after.
Yeah, I look at this, and someone asked me the other day what I thought, and this person I was talking to was a lawyer, and he said, I don't see how it holds up. And I said, it's not about holding up. It's about in the year or two or however long it takes for this to adjudicate itself. They're doing this to these workers. They're abusing these people, and they're also dwindling the resource of the union by making them fight this stuff. And it seems to me to be busy work to keep the unions doing all this stuff over here instead of the organizing and making people's hours and wages and conditions better.
You're absolutely correct. It's as you pointed out, Roberta Lynch, director of AFSCME Council 31. Said that it was a thin veil of and this is about really stripping the rights of state workers, weakening their union. Mm-hmm. It's about saying that whether you're a veteran taking care of the disabled, a correctional officer, a child protection worker, it's about saying you no longer have a democratic society, a process through your union. That's really what creates a democratic society, is workers on the job in many ways, having rights, a voice on the job. That's what this is about, taking that away and economically depriving workers of fair share of and that's really what it's about. Fair share is about a fair share of what workers do in order to help in the public sector create a better society. And this is, using terms like First Amendment rights, which is what the right wing is doing on this whole issue of right to work, is saying First Amendment that workers should have a right to choose. Well, they already do have a right to choose. And the law that's set up gives workers the right to choose to not be in the union and the public sector. And if they're not, they pay a fair share because we are legally obligated to represent them. All the workers benefit, and workers the union cannot say, we're not going to represent you, we're not going to let you have the benefits that we negotiate that create a middle class in the first place. And so this is a way to try to divide some workers. But in the end, in our state, Illinois, we're a very strong union, and that's partly why he decided to do, I think, a full frontal assault on us.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this, and I've had numerous conversations with people who have said, "Well, I should have freedom because it's a freedom versus tyranny issue." And I say, "Okay, well, I'd like to have the freedom to come into your store and take whatever I want and not pay for it. I should have the freedom to do that, right?" And they're not thrilled with that.
Right. Bruce Rauner doesn't say, who is a billionaire CEO, who, by the way, has driven companies into the ground, whose patients in nursing homes that he owned have died because of poor practices. You could go on and on and on about Bruce Rauner, and I think eventually it's going to catch up with him anyway. But as CEO, he could do whatever he wanted, and billionaires and multimillionaires usually feel that way. But he has to be accountable to the citizens, and he's trying to get ahead of the game. And I think you've already said that this is about this is actually goes back years with the ideological right and the big money, the Koch brothers funding the Illinois Policy Institute and other organizations and putting up Bruce Rauners of the world to carry out their agenda and his own agenda, which is to make more money off the backs of working people. It's as simple as that, and that's really what it's about.
So let me ask you, because I get a lot of responses from people saying, this is radical, this is this, that, and the other thing. What are the people in your area saying? What are the people that you're encountering? What response are you getting from them?
I'm actually energized in a way because these contract fights that we often get into and the debate that public workers have pensions and are sapping state government or local government. It gets drawn out. It's hard to have a forum to have that discussion because we don't control the airwaves. Your show is unusual in many respects, but most media reports the voice of the wealthy, and this I think gives us an opportunity to actually have a dialogue. There's been TV, there's been radio, there's been newspaper, and it also has caused the labor movement in Illinois and even around the country to start galvanizing. And I think what will be a united, to use an old term, a united front. It's happening. There's meetings going on as we speak. There are legal strategies going on, but ultimately it's going to be a ground war. It's going to be because that's what it's really about. We will file legal action. We do think it's illegal. We hope that the Democratic and Republican legislators who understand how ridiculous this is, and statements have shown that they do believe that, but nevertheless, we need them to act as well. So it's but ultimately, I think that you're going to see unions from the trades to the public sector unions in Illinois and perhaps other places now saying, you know what, it happened in Wisconsin, it happened in Indiana, it happened in all places in Michigan. We can't let it keep going. We have to stand our ground, and that's only going to happen through solidarity
and through organizing and hitting the streets. Now, I understand your legislature, which is an unusual situation there. I mean, you've got a Republican governor who has taken this really radical action with a Democratic legislature that I understand can overturn this order.
We believe they can. They say they can. Nevertheless, he's trying to use a legal mumbo jumbo, which he has to make this decision because it's his job as governor. It's not his job as governor to interpret the law. His job is to exercise what the Constitution says and what the law says, and he's disregarding it. But people violate the law all the time. and enforcement sometimes takes a long time.
Right.
Nevertheless, this is the reality, and I think it does demonstrate even more than ever. And many people who even sat out the election are probably scratching their head and going, I guess I didn't think he could do this, even though he said up front he was going to do this.
Why is that? Why are we still in that mindset? I mean, we've seen all of this ugliness across the country and in places like Wisconsin and Michigan and Ohio, and here in Pennsylvania even, where you've got people who are saying, well, I didn't think he would be that bad, so I didn't bother voting. That's insane to me.
Well, I think that in so many ways, as you know, the American public is somewhat cynical. There's sometimes good reasons to feel cynical, but yet we're not an educated, we're a pretty literate country, but when it comes to civic responsibilities, we're not as educated as people are in other places. And people do take for granted the things that they've had, and the erosion for working people has been somewhat long and slow. It's been a 35-year process to dismantle the New Deal and the Great Society and those kinds of things. And then younger people are feeling disengaged, and certainly people who have been chronically unemployed feel disengaged. And the truth of the matter is that as the wealth has gone to the 1%, and there's nothing, even the right wing can't deny that,
right.
Because the facts are so clear. It's the concentration of wealth is just going to fewer and fewer people. I think that people feel that there isn't a good anything they can do, because a lot of the elected officials have not exercised good decision making on making jobs and rebuilding the middle class. And every aspect of, from the national government on down has been just say no. So for the last 7 years, it's been the Republicans have been the party of no, and I think people feel like it's gridlock and there's nothing that can be done. So there's apathy.
Right.
But our job is to help educate people.
Well, hopefully this shocks people awake. Let me ask you the last line of questioning on a different topic. Put on your other hat as president of the Illinois Labor History Society. I understand some big news around the area there, around the Pullman area.
Well, in fact, Pullman, the Pullman district, which is where the great 1894 national strike of railroad workers to defend the workers of Pullman who had their wages cut by George Pullman, the billionaire of the day, the king of the day, and also in the industry that employed the Pullman porters that helped create, in many ways, this Philip Randolph, a civil rights movement that predated Martin Luther King, fight for justice, a fight for economic democracy and social justice. That whole district, that area of Pullman, is now going to be a national park declared by Obama this February 19th. It will be the first urban national park, and we will now be able to tell the story in a national park of the history of America in one area. It's awesome. It's going to be great. I think it's going to revitalize, in some ways, the area economically. The Labor History Society is really excited. We've been holding Labor Day programs there and educational programs and many other partners. It's just a great opportunity. And what it does is it tells the story of how workers built the middle class. And it's now going to be enshrined as a national park. National monument is what it's called. It's the same distinction. There's no distinction.
Right. That's fantastic news. And also out of that came the right to have your own name, if I remember right, because all of the porters were named George, if I recall.
The 10,000 Men Named George, an important documentary that everybody should see. It's the ability of, once again, of a small handful of people like Bruce Rauner to divide and conquer and just simply exercise their will as if there is no rule of law. And this brought, it doesn't happen in one day. It's a number of generations building this struggle. But you built, in many ways, Labor Day in America, the right of workers to organize, a civil rights movement connected to the labor movement. It all comes through the story of Pullman. And when you deny people the right to have their own name, you just call them the name of the king or the divine ruler, in that case, George Pullman. That lack of dignity creates a response. And
so I guess the more things change, the more they say the same. I guess all state workers are not going to be called Bruces, huh?
That's kind of it's sad, but I guess I like humor, and I think that's 39,000 employees named Bruce. But now I don't think we'll go there. But I think Bruce is going to be a one term or less, in my opinion.
Good deal. Larry Spivak, I appreciate you taking time for us, filling us in on what's going on there, and I'd love to have you back on the program again real soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. Did you work a 40-hour work week this week? If you did, this is an important day for you. On this day in labor history, the year was 1926. And on this day, labor leader Benjamin Gold began what became a general strike of all furriers in New York City. Benjamin Gold was born in Russia and immigrated with his family to the United States when he was 12 years old. He worked at several jobs before entering work in the fur industry. He became active in the Furrier Union at only 14 years old. In 1926, Gold helped lead some 12,000 workers, including Jewish, Greek, and African-American furriers, on strike. One of their core demands was a 40-hour work week. Despite numerous acts of police brutality against the workers, constant red baiting, and dwindling strike funds, the workers held strong. Ben Gold helped raise money for the strikers, visiting other union halls throughout the city to sell 40-hour Liberty bonds. He helped get the New York State Federation of Labor and other unions in the city to support the cause. He argued that the 40-hour work week was important for all workers in New York and across the nation. With this support, Gold organized a rally at Madison Square Garden. The labor supporters filled the garden, making it the largest labor meeting in New York up to that time. After 17 long weeks, the furriers were successful, winning their first contract that recognized a 40-hour, 5-day work week. They also won a 25% pay increase, union inspection of shops, an employer contribution to an unemployment insurance fund, a paid day off, and equal assignments of work without favoritism. These brave workers helped to set the standard for the work week of today. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at laborhistoryin2.
Tales of American Political History with Clinton Porter Hackney.
We've been talking about a veterans group inside a California prison and one of their visitors who sought to encourage them. The prisoners were all military veterans helping other veterans. They had received many visitors over the years that had come to thank them and inspire them to continue. But one day, a retired Los Angeles police officer, who was also an Army reservist, showed up and surprised the heck out of him. As the visitor prepared to enter the strange world at the inside of a major prison, he felt comfortable. His name was Ken Osmond. He had served more than 18 years as a police officer in Los Angeles. "I've been in lots of jails and escorted lots of prisoners," he said, "and his time in the Army would also provide a bond with these inmates." Join us again next time to find out why Osmond's visit was so special to this veterans organization. This is Clinton Porter Hackney at cphackney.com.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME.
We make Pennsylvania happen!
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
When you get time, the sound of the drum. Lock up each and not the rest. So I can't raise my fist. You can't kill the protester. Can't kill. You can't kill the protest.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So, I'm looking at this article over at Bloomberg News, and it's more of an opinion piece than it's really an article. And I expect more from Bloomberg, but they point out, this woman points out, Allison Schrager. She said the title being "Would Stronger Unions Help the Middle Class?" And look, it's a hit piece. It's a piece to push back against the idea that collective bargaining and people coming together and bargaining for better wages, hours, conditions, all of those things somehow not going to do it nowadays. Because we're so much more of a diverse workforce. We're more dynamic. We're smarter, is their argument. And according to economists Emin Deniralsaw of the Census Bureau and Jeremy Greenwood, a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, they say that unions, and this is what she writes, unions are weaker today. It's a symptom of the polarized economy. It's not a cause of it. No. It's not 30 years of unions are bad, unions are bad, unions are bad, unions are bad. And you're so much smarter. Oh, you're so much smart. Oh, you're so smart. Oh, you're so smart. Oh, you were just so smart. It's not that. No, it's that, we are much smarter. And, what the article points out is these two people believe that because we have a highly productive intellectual workforce who are smart people, there's less incentive for people to join unions because they can negotiate for themselves. I look at this, and it's the exact same argument we've been hearing from the beginning. You're better than them. You're smarter than they are. You're worth more than they are. It's classic divide and conquer. It's classic. And what these two guys say is that, what they believe, according to the article, is that unions once thrived because there was a time when workers of all skill levels had an incentive to band together. They say it doesn't work today. No. Organized labor is clunky and ineffective. And you go, wait a second. Hold on. Walk back. Come this way with me a little bit. It's still about raising the working conditions and the wages and better hours for all workers at all skill levels. It's about having that voice and that power on the job. It's about having that collective ability to negotiate that the individual doesn't have. That's what it's really about. This idea that that as we got smarter, our need for collective action somehow went away. As we got smarter, we became smarter. And thus we don't need those unions is ridiculous. Because understand, and this is the beautiful part in all this, understand that management people today are making less than they were 30 years ago. Their bargaining power has diminished. All along the economic scale, everybody's wages have fallen backwards. And that's because they haven't had the bargaining power. Now, the reason our wages look like they're going up is because at the top, you've got people with a whole bunch of money, which brings everybody up. Now, look, if Shaquille O'Neal and I are in the same room, the median income in that room, really freaking high. The reality is I'm still broke. He's still very, very rich. And what they point out, and this is where, again, I'm not entirely against this line of thought, but what they say is if the goal is redistribution of income, they say the tax code is a more effective way of doing it. And I agree. We used to have both. Both. Understand this. Go back to the good socialist days of Dwight David Eisenhower. We had both. High unionization rates, where people had rights on the job, a voice on the job, and a say in their conditions, all that stuff, and a really high tax rate. In fact, 92% for those at the very, very tippity top. And it was progressively lower as you made less money, which meant the bigger your shoulders, the more water you carried, the smaller your shoulders, the less water. Very, very simple stuff. And here's the other part of this. We all paid higher tax rates back in the 50s. All of us. And you know what? The whole system didn't come collapsing down. So the right-wing argument of we need low taxes and no unions has brought us to a very unequal place where you've got the Bruce Rahners of the world, where you've got the billionaire class of the world who wants and expects it all. And then you got the rest of us, man, who are struggling. And then you got idiots like these people writing articles going, do we need unions anymore? I don't think so, because we're smarter then. Yeah, that's working. Which is why the adjunct faculty at Boston University voted overwhelmingly to unionize. Yeah, those are really dumb people. You know, those professors, those people with PhDs, dumb. They don't need it. No. They're not smart enough to do it on their own. Idiotic. I got to take a break. I'm going to lose my mind. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around.
They don't faze me, even if I look and act really crazy. I will wait till she betrayed me. Now my vision is no longer hazy. I'm very lucky to have my crew. Pissed to find me when she flew. I've been knocked down, beat down, black and blue. She's not the one coming back for you. She's not the one coming back for you. If I fall back down, you're one over again. If I fall back down, you're gonna be my friend.
National interest will be served only if this project does not significantly exacerbate the problem of carbon pollution.
The EPA just gave Obama a reason to reject the Keystone XL pipeline. New rule, feds must take future sea level rise into account. Extreme weather whiplash from record snow in Boston to record drought in San Francisco. Plus,
it's one reason why I don't think they can avoid this question in a way that they have in previous campaigns.
Majority of Americans, including Republicans, now want action on global warming.
All of that action and more straight ahead from bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
When you get the AFL-CIO against you, when you get the Teamsters against you because you're taking extreme positions on pipelines that actually make the environment safer, that's denying science.
Wait a minute. Is that Joe Scarborough?
Yep.
Did he just say opposition to the Keystone XL pipeline was extreme?
Yep.
Did he say it's better for the environment?
Yeah.
And then he said those who oppose it are denying science.
That's right.
And that was on MSNBC.
Yeah.
The supposedly liberal news network.
Right.
Right. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, 3 hours of Republican Joe Scarborough every morning on MSNBC means that's the liberal network. So you've got your work cut out for you today.
Yes, I do.
Before you begin, however, I want to welcome aboard Green News Report's newest affiliate partner, FYI Nation Network. Glad to have you guys on board. Glad to be in the FYI Nation. Check them out at FYINation.com.
Welcome to the club, guys.
Okay, Desi, with all of that out of the way, what do you have for us today?
Big news in the Keystone XL pipeline fight. This was President Obama back in June 2013.
National interest will be served only if this project does not significantly exacerbate the problem of carbon pollution.
The Environmental Protection Agency just gave Obama that reason to reject the controversial project, saying on Tuesday that the pipeline from Canada, quote, represents a significant increase in greenhouse gas emissions.
Why is it suddenly now significant?
The EPA says that the current crash in oil prices means that building the proposed pipeline will be vital for Canadian tar sands developers, and that will increase production, and that will increase emissions, more than what would otherwise occur if the pipeline weren't built.
So the prices are low, therefore Canada has to pump out more tar sands, therefore it's going to significantly exacerbate the problem of global warming.
That's right. Rail transport for the developers becomes uneconomical at these low oil prices.
So now they really need this pipeline more than ever, and yet it can cause more damage than ever, according to the EPA.
That's right.
Don't tell Joe Scarborough.
It's not the end of the process yet. The president still has to make his final determination, but this is a significant development. Meanwhile, while the Republican majority in Congress was distracted by legislation to force construction of the pipeline,
Legislation that will be vetoed.
that's right, President Obama quietly made a major change to federal policy last week. He issued an executive order saying from now on, all federally funded projects must include future sea level rise in planning and construction.
What does that mean?
That's to ensure that tax dollars aren't wasted on repeatedly repairing projects that are only going to flood again and again with climate change raising sea levels.
So they must take that into account before they begin a new project.
Before they can even approve a project, if they want to have any federal funding.
There goes Obama being a tyrant again.
An emerging consensus on climate change. A new New York Times poll finds that an overwhelming majority of the American public, and this is including half of Republicans, accept climate science and support government action to curb global warming. 2/3 in the poll say they're less likely to support any candidate that denies global warming. That is set to be a major issue in the 2016 campaign.
So this is a real problem for Republican presidential candidates. Half of their party wants action, but the bulk of the base, who they have to win over to even get the nomination, has been conned into believing climate change isn't even happening.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a minefield for them.
Nice way to put it.
Finally, wild weather whiplash. Boston was hit over the weekend with the second major storm in a week, setting the record for the snowiest 7-day period in the city's history, getting a whole season's worth of snow in just 10 days. But it's the opposite case for the city of San Francisco that recorded no rain for the month of January for the first time ever in 165 years. Nothing. Zero. That's it.
It was funny. I was seeing right-wingers on Twitter pointing to the record snow in Boston to say, that proves there's no global warming. Good luck with folks like that in the Republican presidential primary.
Yeah.
For much more on all of the stories we covered today and the ones we couldn't get to, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. While you're there, please remember to make a donation to help the Green News Report stay on your public airwaves. Don't count on Joe Scarborough to educate the public. Find us and follow us on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Please come to Boston for the springtime. I'm staying here.
Your working class radio experience, where hard work, common sense, and rational thought are a reality. The Rick Smith Show.
Working hard to make a left. Red shirt, a bomb red. Father, son, left to carry on. Blue denim, hell is fake. Oh, he's a working class man.
And welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. You know, it's always amazing to me. You look at other countries around the world. I mean, Germany has an enormously high union density rate, yet when they come here to the U.S., not so much. They become like a U.S. company. Same thing, if you remember when we were talking about IKEA a couple of years ago, in their home country, unionization rate 70-80%. Here fighting tooth and nail to keep workers out. And I look at this latest story out in California where this Finnish company, a company from Finland with, union density rates in the 70% range there in Finland, not helping here in the U.S. So what's going on is the workers are going, you know what? We want better wages. We want better hours. We want better conditions. And as we've been talking about here on the program, the conditions, that's one of the key ones, which is why I've asked Raul Fabian. He's a 7-year employee of the Hatamaki company to come and talk with us. Raul, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Tell me what's going on. What's going on? What are you and your coworkers doing?
Oh, hi, my name is Raul. I'm from California. Basically, we work in Huramaki, LA, and we're standing up for getting a union because our benefits are not really good. The pays are low. And one of the things is, like you mentioned right now, the conditions are not really good. I mean, in summer, it gets really hot. And discipline system is really hard for us.
Yeah,
We
explain
try
that to
look
me. Tell me what do you mean? I mean, a lot of people go, discipline sucks, but explain it to me.
Yeah, I mean, the company looks for different things or reasons to give you points. I mean, probably to put you on a pressure point so you could basically quit and not give you the benefits or the conditions that you need to work.
So you're basically talking about favoritism. Let's say someone gets hurt, and now we're going to start harassing them until they get out the door, or if someone they don't like, all of that stuff that we've seen throughout the history of work, not just in this country but all over the place. That sounds like a reasonable reason why you'd want to organize.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons. Especially, we know that Huramaki, we can make it better. We can make the conditions of the company much better, not only for one person, for all of us.
Right.
If the rest of the Huramakis have union, why doesn't California have it? I mean, Huramaki in Finland, all around the U.S., they all have unions, and we're not asking more than what they already have. We just want the same kind of benefits, the same kind of discipline.
Well, the same kind of respect, I would argue. The same respect you get in Finnish workers, you should be given to American workers at the minimum.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
what does
Respect.
Huramaki do? What do you do working for them? And are they owned by another company? What's the background?
Well, their headquarters are in Finland, and they have I think it's like six other companies around the U.S., and most of them have a union.
Right.
And I think the only one that doesn't have it right now, it's the one we're working right here in California. So we make the same product, we make the same containers, but we don't make the same pay.
Right. What
getting
kind of
paid
containers
less.
do you make?
We make for food containers, especially ice cream.
Oh, okay. So, if you're making it in California or Finland or whoever, it's the same cost. It should be the same wages for the workers in the same conditions. So when you had this action, what kind of response I guess first, what did you do? And then what kind of response did you get?
Well, when we went public, we asked the company to meet with us, but they refused. We wanted to let them know our concerns, the things that we needed to make the company succeed more and have better conditions of work. But until the day, they haven't met with us.
That's interesting. Have you reached out to the other plants, where workers in other plants, to get their support? Because I would assume down the road at some point you're going to need their help if this turns ugly.
Yes, I mean, we've been talking with them. We have their support, but what we want is to get the support in our company, with our company, because they've been kind of scaring people around, giving comments about how bad the union is, and passing around flyers that the union cost is really high. So people get kind of scared, intimidated. So what we want is the response of our co-workers in this facility.
Right. And you've been there 7 years. Is this the first time that this has come up? Have things gotten progressively worse over the years that caused this? What's the tipping point here?
Yes, I mean, we could talk about the discipline actions.
So it's been the excessive discipline then?
Yes. What else? Racist people around.
So basically, just how people are treated, and it goes back to what I've often said on this program. Most people who join unions and want to organize, it's rarely about the money. It's generally about respect. It's generally about conditions and where I go to work every day. Am I going to come home at the end of the day? Am I going to be injured? Am I going to have that kind of a say? And that's kind of what I'm getting out of you. It's I mean, maybe a little bit about money, but it's more about respect and safety.
Exactly.
What are the
Yeah, I
injury
think,
rates? What kind of injury rates are you guys looking at? I mean, just last week we talked about this place in Wisconsin that of the 4,100 employees over the last 3 years, more than 1,000 of them have been injured, which is just a mind-blowing number of people harmed. I'm curious, do you have anything similar to that in your workplace?
No, not right
Good.
now. But I hope we don't get to those
Good.
numbers.
No, I mean, it's outrageous. But, I hear so many people saying, the working conditions are bad and, people are being injured. And some people don't even report the injuries because if they do, then comes the punitive discipline, then comes the harassment, the surveillance, all of that other stuff.
Yes, I think that's one of the things that if someone gets injured, nobody reports it because they're afraid they could get fired or get some kind of retaliation against them.
That's insane.
Probably that's why the numbers are not that high. But
yeah.
So what we want is respect.
There you go. So when this is
respect, better pay, better benefits.
There you go. I think that's the reason people organize unions. Better wages, hours, conditions. Bang, bang, bang. So let me ask you a last question, because I know you got to get to work. When this runs its course, what are you hoping for at the other side? I'm hoping that folks are coming out to help and they're going to rally around your cause to help get this. What are you hoping for personally?
Yes, I'm hoping that all the other facilities can support us, standing up and showing us the way they are treated, so we compare and see the difference, so we could get a conscience about it and get better respect from our company.
And maybe even share best practices to where everyone does better off. To me, it's only a win-win situation there, Raul.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
I appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Raul Fabian. To me, again, you go back to this whole reason people organize: better wages, better hours, conditions. Also the respect. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk with Graham Foytier. He's one of the organizers there on this campaign. We're going to talk about the nuts and bolts, the inside game, what's going on the ground, and how we can maybe help. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Controversial, thought-provoking, opinionated. Rick Smith.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, this is your World in Tooth. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, with the Talk Radio News Service. United Nations reform. There are few issues talked about so much, but which are acted on so little. After all, why is the UN the way it is? For an experiment in world government, the status quo is about as enshrined as it gets. The UN Security Council, for instance, structures its power around 5 of World War II's victors, not the largest economies, populations, or militaries of the 21st century. Yet the current prospects for reform are bleak, with reform drives by both the Secretary General and the members of the General Assembly seemingly going nowhere. Enter the Elders, a group of 12 thought leaders from around the world established by Nelson Mandela. Its members include former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan and Jimmy Carter. Over the weekend, the group called for 4-point UN reform, including expanding the Security Council, forcing its veto-wielding members to publicly explain their vetoes, lending a greater voice to civil society in consultations, and opening up the election process for the Secretary General.
Most of the elders have had high positions too in the UN.
Leslie Ann Knight is the CEO of the Elders.
It's because of their passionate love and belief in the United Nations that they have launched this encouraging statement around strengthening and making the UN fit for purpose.
Knight says the Elders aren't debating reform in the abstract. They're keenly aware of human suffering around the world and think reform could reduce that suffering.
If the Security Council had not been quite so deadlocked through veto use by the P5 powers, I think the elders firmly believe more progress could have been made in bringing peace to both Syria, and we may not have got to the situation we are now in with the Ukraine.
For more global news headlines, visit talkradionews.com.
Would you dive 14 feet deep in the Susquehanna to keep a bridge safe? Would you spend night after night with prisoners to keep your community safe? Would you spend Christmas Eve plowing snow to keep roads safe? AFSCME members do. Men and women who choose to serve in public service. Mine inspectors, 911 dispatchers, healthcare workers, parole agents. You may not think about them, but know they're all thinking about you. This message brought to you by AFSCME Council 13.
Where family values are more than slogans. The Rick Smith Show.
That whole family values thing, I love that frame because it's helpful, especially when you're talking about on the job. It's, hey, what's more of a family value than being able to go home at the end of the night? What's more of a family value than being able to put food on the table, keep a roof over your kid's head? To me, those are family values. Respect, dignity. Those are things we should be encouraging in families. And sadly, what's happened across workplaces across this country is that's been taken away. And I go back to my belief is we've allowed unions to be attacked, assaulted, destroyed in this country, and we need to stand up and fight for them, which is why I'm glad to see people like Raul, who, nice guy, little maybe too nice in my view, but out there fighting the good fight. Which is why we've asked Graham Fortier to come talk with us. He's the lead organizer out there with the AFL-CIO on this campaign. Graham, thanks for sticking around for us.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
So, I look at this, and at the end of the day, that number one issue for me is always respect. It's always the conditions. It's always having that voice that seems ever so important.
Exactly. It's all about respect for these workers. It's about specific issues. And when you combine those issues, you see the picture, the total lack of respect that large companies have for their workers. And that's why these workers have decided to stand up for themselves and demand that they get that respect because they deserve it.
Yeah, I look at Raul, who seemed like a very nice guy, very soft-spoken, could have been a little more passionate because there are folks here in our listening areas that are doing the same kind of jobs, whether you're printing ice cream containers or water bottles or making widget whatnots or gizmos. It's the same dynamic. It's the same powerless dynamic that we see. Someone gets hurt on a job. All of a sudden, all of this punitive discipline comes. The same kind of dynamics.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the workers inside this plant, they kind of come from all sorts of walks of life. And, we have some people who are really fired up and want to yell. And there's some people like Raul who have their own approach where he's very kind of cool and level-headed about it. But he understands that, that this is important. This is a really important fight for him and his family. And he's been a great leader in that plant, talking to people, explaining to them what's been going on.
Now, this Huhtamäki company, this is a company based in Finland. Are they associated with Nestle Corporation, the big water company?
Well, this facility here, and I believe other Huhtamäki facilities, make products for Nestle. They make paper products for the food service industry.
Okay.
So when you're talking about Dreyer's ice cream, which is a Nestle product, those little pint boxes that you see in the grocery store, those are printed and shaped and formed in plants like Huhtamäki right here in Los Angeles.
And this Los Angeles plant, if I got Raul right, this is the only one that isn't organized?
Well, he was a little bit confused. There are several. I believe there's over 20 different Huhtamäki facilities in the United States. Some of them are just storage warehouses. There are 6 union Huhtamäki plants in the United States. 5 plants that are represented by the United Steelworkers, and then another one that's represented by the warehouse workers from the UFCW.
Okay. So yesterday you had this event. What'd you guys do?
Basically, Nestle headquarters is located in Glendale, California, pretty close to where Huhtamaki is here. And basically, we took a delegation of workers and community supporters and held a little press conference outside of their headquarters. And we had a letter. Basically, Nestle sent an auditor to the plant back in December of last year to check on some of the conditions that the workers have been complaining about. However, the auditor only met with a handful of workers. They were all handpicked by management.
Of course.
And, the questions they asked were literally, what's your name? What's your birthday? If you work overtime, do they pay you overtime? Very, very simple questions, that really didn't get to the root of the story of what's going on here. And they also didn't get to meet with any of the workers who have really been, leading this fight and the struggle for change. So, 6 of those workers went with us yesterday and went into the Nestle headquarters to give a letter and say, like, look, we want to meet with you too. We didn't get a chance to meet with you in December. You only came for one day. Some of us weren't even on the shift that day. We want to meet with you.
Right.
We're hoping that. I'm sorry.
And what the company say? What was their response?
Well, of course, the security. We met with the security officer, and he said, of course, we're not allowed to send anybody down. Have you tried calling us? Have you tried calling to set up an appointment? And the worker said, oh yeah, we've called. We've been calling. We've been pressuring Nestle for a while now. We're here because we want a meeting.
So they wouldn't even send a communications flack down to at least, give the illusion that somebody was listening?
Nope. No, they didn't.
I guess that's not surprising.
Yeah.
Because, when you have complete and total control, why even attempt to accede any of that? I guess I'm not surprised.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we kind of knew it was going to be a long shot for them to actually send someone down. But, we just told them, it's like, what? Unless someone meets with us, we'll just keep coming back. We're really hoping to get Nestle's support and helping ensure that the working conditions inside this plant, that's one of their suppliers, meet with their supplier code of conduct.
Right. Now,
we think that's important.
I'm with you. Now, this Huhtamaki company is a Finland-based corporation. Have you had any contact with them, and what response have you gotten out of them over this?
Yeah, the steelworkers have done a great job in really building an international network. Huhtamaki is a global company. So they have a plant in Finland. They have union plants in the United Kingdom, Brazil, South Africa, Germany, all over the world. And, we've been we've kind of created a kind of committee of union leaders from different Huhtamaki plants around the world who are united and standing up to support workers organizing for here in Los Angeles.
So last question I've got for you then, how do we help? How can our listeners help? How can consumers help to put a little pressure on Nestle and Huhtamaki?
I think right now these workers are just so appreciative of any support that people are giving. There's as far as, what we're asking right now is basically just for your support, just to kind of get the word out there that this is happening. That these workers deserve respect. These workers deserve a voice from the job. This is something, what's really interesting to us is this company is union. This is a big union company. So why are they fighting so hard against these non-union workers?
Because they're in the U.S. and they can.
Right? Exactly. Right. I guess, it comes down to power. They don't want to concede the power. Yeah. And, that's what these workers are standing up to. So really just, any community support we can get, especially out here in Los Angeles, is I know is greatly appreciated by the workers here.
Yeah, if nothing else, you go and you go like the Facebook page, Respect for All Huhtamaki Workers. We've got a link at thericksmithshow.com. That's a quick thing you can do. Show a little support, maybe leave a comment. Hey, we're with you at this early date. And as this continues along, Graham, I'd love to have you come back and give us updates of what's going on.
Yeah, we would love to be back.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. But I look at this, and again, you go back to this whole push, and look, there are warehouses in this area. In fact, tons of them, where workers are in the same kind of conditions. Nobody's listening. The conditions are less than. This kind of organizing is something I think that has to happen. And there's a moment where I think all workers go, you know what, we've had enough. We've hit the maximum level of enough, and that's kind of where we're going to be. The idea of there's only so much what people are willing to eat, and you listen to Raul and you listen to the story. I think those folks have reached that point. There's only so much of what people are willing to eat. And again, if you just throw a like over at there, respect for all Hamaki workers. We've got a link at thericksmithshow.com. You can click on Graham's name or Raul's name. It'll take you right there to be able to like that page and figure out, find out what's going on there. Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Me and my people are ready. Me and my people are just about due. I'm a massive airstrike on a beautiful night. Yeah, it's my song I'm singing. Somebody better start counting. We're coming out swinging.
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. AFSCME Council 31 Executive Director Roberta Lynch says Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner's executive order forbidding state agencies from collecting fair share payments from state employees is blatantly illegal. The anti-union billionaire governor can't get the Democrat-controlled legislature to attack unions like this, so he's trying the executive order route. Lynch says that Rauner's scheme to strip the rights of state workers and weaken their unions is a blatantly illegal abuse of power. AFSCME says it and all of organized labor will stand together with those who believe in democracy to overturn Rauner's order.
People need to understand, especially maybe women in the nursing field, they need to understand that it's okay to stand up and you can win. You can. People think you can't against a big industry. To be able to advocate for justice is one of the most important things I think any of us can do.
Ann Waite, the Ohio union nurse who just won a civil jury award of more than $2 million for being illegally fired and defamed for pro-union activity. Waite had been a nurse at Affinity Medical Center for 36 years when she was fired 2 years ago for supporting the National Nurse Organizing Committee's effort to organize. It took a year for the NLRB and a federal judge to order her reinstated, and it took another year to get the civil suit judgment clearing her name. The boss didn't just fire her for union organizing, they also tried to get her license revoked. Waite had her job back, but she wanted her name back, and she wanted justice.
They had compiled all these untruths from so many people and sent this information to the Board of Nursing, and which made it defamation with malice. I needed my name cleared. It was about reputation. It was about clearing my name. So even though the Labor Relations Board and the federal judge put me back to work, I needed to pursue it in the civil court.
Ann Waite's fellow RNs are currently still trying to negotiate a contract at Affinity Medical Center, owned by the Tennessee-based Community Health Systems chain. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker is violating federal campaign law. That's the charge in a formal complaint filed against Walker with the Federal Elections Commission by the American Democracy Legal Fund. The complaint alleges that Walker is exceeding campaign contribution limits through Our American Revival, political organization created by Walker to test the waters for a presidential run. The complaint charges that Walker is raising and spending funds that are beyond the legal contribution limits and source restrictions of the Federal Election Campaign Act of 1971. The American Democracy Legal Fund wants the FEC to enjoin Walker's organization from further violations and to impose the maximum fines allowed. This newscast made possible in part through support from the United Steelworkers Union. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Minimum wage! Yeah!
You know what it means when they pay you minimum wage? You know what they're trying to tell you is like, hey, if I could pay you less, I would.
Yes. I'm sure they would, especially if it was Scott Wagner. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So Governor Wolf was speaking to the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO's legislative conference yesterday, I believe it was, and said, look, he wants the passage of a higher minimum wage. He says that's a priority this legislative session for him, along with some other things. Now, I loved the newspaper's little response in there. Before a closed door meeting, how'd the newspaper article guy get in there if it was closed? Just is kind of a thought. I don't know that it was a closed door meeting. Wait a minute. No, the door was actually closed. People were going in and out of it, but they were opening it and it was closing behind that. Okay, never mind. My bad. Maybe it was. It was a closed door. In fact, the front door of the building was closed. So if you wanted to go there, but for me, this minimum wage thing is huge because I've been saying my thought is that it's almost over because Wagner has put forth this 875 bill that they will. I fear they will railroad through, and I don't know that 875 is enough to help our economy and definitely not to help low-wage workers, which is why we've asked our good friend, labor economist Mark Price from the Keystone Research Center to come and talk with us. Mark, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's always wonderful to be here.
So closed-door meeting. Closed door. The doors were closed. So I guess you could say it was a closed-door meeting, right?
I don't know. Doors open, doors close. Sometimes journalism is hard.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, words. Those are just kind of difficult. But let's get to the 875 because I've had a couple people say, "Well, that's reasonable. 875 over the next 3 years. That's okay, right?"
Well, 875 is better than doing nothing.
Okay.
Right? It's not the greatest thing in the world to say, but it certainly recovers some of the ground that we lost since the last increase. But it falls, as you had Steve Herzenberg on. He made the case pretty clearly that it falls short of where we would like to see, which is somewhere in the range of $10.10, which gets you back to where the minimum wage was in 1968. So it's an increase. I don't think we know yet how much legs it has, and I don't think we know really, what's going to happen up there. I think it shocked everyone that something came forward that included a minimum wage increase.
Yeah, well, no, part of me says it was just a way to get deflate the issue and take that away, because I still think I don't even know if 1010's enough, but it's a start.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. A case study here is to remember Michigan. Michigan had a initiative. So Michigan, unlike Pennsylvania, the voters get to vote on important issues, and they managed to get on the ballot a minimum wage issue where folks were going to vote, and they were going to choose what they were choosing 1010. It included an inflation adjustment, and it was clearly broadly popular. And the Republican legislature in Michigan at the time decided that, well, if we don't do anything, this will pass. So instead, they went forward with a bill that set the minimum wage at a lower level and effectively killed the initiative. So, this is not quite the same thing because we don't have an initiative process here, but certainly, that's the thinking, is that introducing 875 is a way to, recognize that there's a lot of momentum behind the campaign to raise the minimum wage, and this is the way, this is the best you can do.
So I spent a couple of minutes as I was looking at the article, and I try not to do it, but sometimes I just can't help myself. I read some of the comments below the articles, and I know most of them are just trolls, and I know most of them are hired by the National Federation of Small Business and the NFIB and all of these the Chamber of Commerce hires trolls to put these comments in to throw these myths out there like well, they're all teenagers. Why are we raising wages for teenagers?
Yeah, and in defense of the trolls, I mean, if you have an interview with the head of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, with the National Federation of Independent Business, and any of the other sort of alphabet soup of business organizations around the state, the first thing they do in their communication strategy is to say, everyone who makes the minimum wage is a teenager. And the thing to remember is they are being mostly truthful at 725. That it's mostly young folks right there at 725. What they are not being truthful about is that this debate isn't about at 725. This debate is about getting to 1010. And when you're moving the minimum wage up from 725 to 1010, 87% of the people who would be affected by that increase are adults. So, it's a very convenient way to sort of muddy the issue and sort of try to confuse people. And every reporter in Harrisburg and in most of Pennsylvania and in most of the country falls for this, because it's basically, but according to the chamber, and they'll point to an official publication that tells you how many people earn 725. It's teenagers. But again, the debate isn't about 725 exactly. It's getting us to a higher level. Even an increase to 875 benefits mostly adults. So, it's part of the misinformation campaign. At the end of the day, it shouldn't be a big deal because actually the mass majority of likely voters are supportive of minimum wage increases, regardless of the communications, skills of the other side. They're on the losing side of this issue. Their sort of trouble is they've got to find a way to either keep the leadership in the legislature to keep this bill bottled up, or to support some sort of measure that will cost them less, like an increase to 875.
Yeah, I mean, because you keep hearing these same myths coming up, these same frames that have been disproven and dispelled numerous times. You kind of go, at some point, can't we just let it go? I mean, it costs jobs. It's going to cost us millions of jobs. Everyone's going to leave. We raise the minimum wage. Everyone's going to go.
Oh, the chamber was not the chamber, the NFIB, I mix them up all the time, was engaged in a little bit of that today. They had this study they put out a year ago where they said it would cost 100,000 jobs in Pennsylvania. And even the worst estimate nationally is 500,000 jobs from the CBO. And so think about that for a second. The NFIB is telling you that 100,000 jobs would be lost in Pennsylvania, which would basically be 1 out of 5 of the job losses in the whole country. And lo and behold, we actually don't represent 1 out of every 5 people in the country. It's sort of they put out these absurd numbers that just, make no sense. The reality is the debate about, the potential job loss is a very narrow one. And even at the worst, the vast majority of workers would see an increase in their earnings. And even folks who maybe would have a little bit more trouble finding a job, at the end of the day, they're going to find one, and they'll end up finding one at a much higher wage, and they'll end the year with more income than they had before the minimum wage increase.
Which is a good thing. But one of the things that gets me, Mark, and you're the really smart guy in the room here, especially when it comes to economic issues. I spent a couple of minutes, and I know I shouldn't read the comments, but I did. And one of the guys' comments, and I got to read it because it just stopped me dead in my tracks. It said, people forget that the cost of living goes up every year, and therefore minimum wage is mandatory to keep up with that cost of living. He goes on to ask the question, I just wonder if the people who purposely hire people part-time to avoid paying benefits will also by law have to pay the minimum wage. And I'm going, I got to be honest, there's part of me that goes, I don't know that this person should be allowed to comment. I mean, because a couple of things there that just kind of jump right out at you, like this mandatory income increase as the cost of living goes up. Did you not live through the Reagan years where minimum wage didn't go up at all? Haven't you been living through the Obama years where the wage hasn't gone up? Did I miss that?
Well, as a frequent user of Twitter, I will acknowledge that we all suffer from a lack of an editor.
Okay.
Right? I mean, so there are online commenters that sometimes could benefit from an editor to clean up what they're trying to say. So I'm with you. There are some strange theories out there beyond, the standard communication stuff. One of the most common things that actually, you hear a lot is the worry, well, this never does anything. If we raise the minimum wage, it just raises all other prices and all their wages, and everybody's the same. Right? It's sort of a defeatist attitude. And that's absolutely not true. We know that, the wage will go up more than any increase in prices. It'll go up more than any potential loss in employment. Workers will actually be better off after the increase. But it's one of those things common out there that, there's nothing you can do. Just get in line, pay attention. Don't listen to the hippies.
Thus you, the hippie. That's an excellent point that I think everyone needs to hear and understand. This idea that wages need to keep up with inflation, but they also need to be a little bit above. And if you're raising that bottom wage, everybody gets a bump. And as I was reading through the comments, which I know I shouldn't, and I don't know why I do, but it seemed like everyone was internalizing. Well, now a hamburger is going to be $30, and I'm not going to see that kind of a raise, so I'm not going to get a hamburger. And I'm going, stop, just stop.
Yes. No, I'm totally with you, and I feel your pain. I think I see that a lot, not just because, and I avoid reading the comments, but I hear and see that kind of talk a lot. it's like many things, right? And we often complain, you complain on this show, you're trying to fight it with your labor history minutes, right? There's a lack of labor education in this country. And in the same way, there's a lack of education about how the economy works. So most of the education we get about how the economy works is terrible, right? It's terrible things like, oh, well, if we just cut taxes, we'd have trickle down, income growth. That kind of stuff is very common and very entrenched. But, people's understanding that when you're raising wages, what you're doing is putting more money in the pockets of consumers and they're going to go out and spend that. That's not always as commonly understood as it should be.
Right. And the other part of it is this whole free market thing that I guess, for the last 30 years, we've been beaten with it. So I guess you could, in defense of the guy who I probably should allow to make comments again, and maybe in his defense, maybe he truly believes that equilibrium argument that the free market will decide and then all wages will find equilibrium and everyone will be happy and we'll have more rice and beans.
Yeah, I think there's something deeper, it's part of where a lot of that sort of ethos, I think, comes from is, we live in a pretty terrible society, right? We deal with these enormous corporations in almost every aspect of our life, whether you're talking about the cable company or your phone provider, the company that makes, your computer. There are these big multinational companies and they take a lot of power away from people and it gets pretty easily projected on every other part of our lives, right? And people feel beaten down, they feel roughed up, and they don't trust any institution, let alone, the government. But oddly enough, government's the one institution that we can, yell at and make a lot of noise to a degree, more so than you can to your employer, right? Your immediate employer probably going to fire you, and most people recognize that. So people behave themselves differently when, they're dealing with their employer as opposed to, yelling at their congressman at a town hall.
Yeah, good luck going to the local, store and yelling at the owner there. Good luck on that.
Yeah, good luck. I want my tips, man.
But you did bring up, it's an interesting point about these huge companies because they're really the ones that are paying the minimum wage. Because one of the other myths that we hear often is that this is going to kill small business. And I got to be honest, just from a common sense point of view, I think an increase in the minimum wage would actually help smaller businesses because it might get them a little more business. Absolutely.
It's going to put money in the hands of people who are most likely to spend it. And where those folks tend to be in places that don't have the big, gigantic corporations, right? In the small, corner stores, those are the folks who are likely going to see more customers because their customers have income. And, just in terms of straight data, that's another sort of the terrible communications war that goes on, right? In general, in American society, people have a lot of respect for, small business, even though we can't define what exactly we mean by small business. But
Halliburton.
Halliburton, right. I mean, people do have a sort of, and partly, again, it goes back to that issue. We deal with all these big companies that are just terrible, and it sort of makes us maybe a little naturally appreciative of a little company that, actually is in our neighborhood and a guy we know. But people have a lot of respect. So a lot of the minimum wage debate often degrades into this terrible sort of weird back and forth where, the chamber or the NFIB is saying, oh, this is going to kill small business. And just as you pointed out, actually, the majority of folks who would be impacted by an increase in the minimum wage to 1010, they work in companies with 100 or more employees, right? They're the Targets and the Walmarts of the world that are, largely these low-wage exploitive employers. There are a lot of great small businesses that, pay people decent wages. They may also often have folks who are earning near the minimum wage and might be impacted by this. But I think at the end of the day, a good chunk of them probably would appreciate their workers having more income.
There you go. And last question I've got for you: what do you think the odds of something getting done this legislative session on the minimum wage?
I remain completely unrealistically optimistic. I think the fact that we have a bill now from the Republican side of the chamber to raise the minimum wage, I think signals pretty clearly that something is going to happen. The real fight is going to be, what do we get? Are we going to get to 1010? Are we going to get an inflation adjustment? And are we going to get rid of the tip minimum? And that is where all the action, I think, is going to be. So I think there's no question by the end of this year, we're going to have a minimum wage increase. And I hope to goodness that you don't record this so that we don't come back and make fun of me for being wrong.
Well, there it is right there. But here's some good news, though. In Kentucky, their House has voted to raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour by 2017. And much as you've been pointing out, the Chamber of Commerce opposes the bill because it's going to kill jobs.
Yep. We got momentum. when we're winning Kentucky. So
there you go. Mark, always great talking with you. I appreciate you taking time for us.
Oh, it's great to be here, Rick.
Our good friend Mark Price, labor economist over at the Keystone Research Center. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Exposing that free trade is never free. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. Did you work a 40-hour work week this week? If you did, this is an important day for you. On this day in labor history, the year was 1926. And on this day, labor leader Benjamin Gold began what became a general strike of all furriers in New York City. Benjamin Gold was born in Russia and immigrated with his family to the United States when he was 12 years old. He worked at several jobs before entering work in the fur industry. He became active in the Furrier Union at only 14 years old. In 1926, Gold helped lead some 12,000 workers, including Jewish, Greek, and African American furriers, on strike. One of their core demands was a 40-hour work week. Despite numerous acts of police brutality against the workers, constant red baiting, and dwindling strike funds, the workers held strong. Ben Gold helped raise money for the strikers, visiting other union halls throughout the city to sell 40-hour Liberty bonds. He helped get the New York State Federation of Labor and other unions in the city to support the cause. He argued that the 40-hour work week was important for all workers in New York and across the nation. With this support, Gold organized a rally at Madison Square Garden. The labor supporters filled the garden, making it the largest labor meeting in New York up to that time. After 17 long weeks, the furriers were successful, winning their first contract that recognized a 40-hour, 5-day work week. They also won a 25% pay increase, union inspection of shops, an employer contribution to an unemployment insurance fund, a paid day off, and equal assignments of work without favoritism. These brave workers helped to set the standard for the work week of today. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Tales of American Political History with Clinton Porter Hackney.
We've been talking about a veterans group inside a California prison and one of their visitors who sought to encourage them. The prisoners were all military veterans helping other veterans. They had received many visitors over the years that had come to thank them and inspire them to continue. But one day, a retired Los Angeles police officer, who was also an Army reservist, showed up and surprised the heck out of him. As the visitor prepared to enter the strange world at the inside of a major prison, he felt comfortable. His name was Ken Osmond. He had served more than 18 years as a police officer in Los Angeles. I've been in lots of jails and escorted lots of prisoners, he said, and his time in the Army would also provide a bond with these inmates. Join us again next time to find out why Osmond's visit was so special to this veterans organization. This is Clinton Porter Hackney at cphackney.com.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME.
Keeping the chambers of commerce within their gated communities. The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. I just blow, and I know I shouldn't. I know I shouldn't be reading the comments. I should stop. It's not good for me. It's not good for my blood pressure. And I've never had high blood pressure, but you read some of these idiotic comments, they're trolls. And understand, if you're someone who reads the comments under these articles, understand the ones who are doing it often, there are a couple of different groups. One, people who have no life. That's their world. They're kingfish in that, and they really try to make a cogent argument. They do, and you got to give them credit, even if they're bad spellers and all that. They try, and you give them credit because they deserve it. Then there are the corporate trolls. You've got the Chamber of People, and you've got the trolls from the people like the Commonwealth Foundation or others. You get a little money over you. All you do is whenever you see minimum wage, you troll. There are those, and those people are the ones who keep regurgitating the talking points. The talking points of, well, it's only teenagers, and well, it's going to cost jobs, and well, let's just raise it to $1,000 an hour. How many times have you heard that nonsense? Nobody's talking about that. People are talking about how do we make it the bottom, the floor, that place, that line in the sand, a place where you can exist, where you can live, and maybe have a buck in your pocket to do something else to participate in the economy. Makes perfect sense to me. And look, I'm not the brightest bulb in the box. If people have more change in their pocket, maybe some of that foldy stuff too, they're going to spend it. And where do they spend it? Small local businesses. Makes sense to me, because the minimum wage increase, in my view, is a boom for small businesses. Anyway, our good friend Bernie Sanders, ranking member of the Senate Budget Committee, on this very day said that Congress needs to reallocate funds back into the Social Security Disability Fund to prevent what he called a manufactured crisis. And this manufactured crisis is going to harm the most vulnerable in our country. Sanders spoke at the Budget Committee hearing today, where he said, look, Social Security Disability Insurance program is a life and death program for nearly 11 million Americans, including more than 1 million veterans and 1.8 million children. He points out that the American people have paid into this program. It is an insurance program, not charity. He points out that when Americans pay 6.2% of their income into the payroll tax, almost a full percent of that goes into this disability insurance fund. He says that the average disability insurance benefit is less than $1,200 a month. And for 30% of the beneficiaries, this is their entire income. This is all they get, $1,200 a month maximum. He says nobody's getting rich off of disability benefits, nobody. But he says, sadly, on the very first day of the new Congress, House Republicans passed a rule that would lay the groundwork for a 19% cut in Social Security disability benefits. And I think back to myself. I personally, when my mother passed away, got $279 a month from the time I was 13, when my mother passed away, until I turned 18. And that $279 every month was not enough to feed me, but it helped. And you look at this and you go, this is that line in the sand. This is that, again, much like the minimum wage. Another one of these programs where we say, when crisis hits, when people are harmed, when the sky is falling, you're not going to hit the pavement. But what frustrates and angers me, when Wall Street, when they do it, when they collapse, when they hit the big bump in the road, we're there with a 2-page document saying, here, take it all. Here, $750 billion. Don't worry, we'll cover it. And then we make them promise, you won't do it again, right? Right. Which is why, how many people remember collateralized debt obligations, the CDOs, or commonly known as credit default swaps? You think that they're gone? Well, according to Bloomberg News, you now have the marriage of the two terms, the same product, but the marriage of the two terms, and now they're called bespoke trench opportunities, or BTOs. The bad same things. What they say is it's essentially a CDO backed by a single name credit default swap, customized based on investors' wishes. The pools of derivatives are cut into varying slices of risk that are sold to investors such as hedge funds. Does that sound familiar? Are we now setting up the next major bubble? Because this is learned behavior. They're Pavlovian dogs. I mean, Pavlov learned it. You keep feeding them and they're going to salivate. Here's what happened. We bailed them out. They figured out a way, and it's going to happen again. So mark your calendar. Give it 4 or 5 years. Wait for things to go boom. So I just thought I'd share that along, that somebody has noticed that these have been out there. And as I understand, they've been out for a couple of years now. This is something that's just now gotten filtered down to the common folk, people like you and me. But I love the name Bespoke Trench Opportunity. You got to throw opportunity in there, right? Jeez, how dumb are we? Oh, I gotta take a break. I don't know. Bang, here we go again. Right back, stick around.
They laid their future plans. They saw that food was everything to man. And maybe then they had a thought to help the poorest folks, but it only brought more money to their hands. And the boys were getting poor, people turned away, not equal to admit the way they planned. It's taking all the soul away from everything they grew. They can't handle the weight on which to stand.
Uncovering the con and conservatism. Rick Smith.
National interest will be served only if this project does not significantly exacerbate the problem of carbon pollution.
The EPA just gave Obama a reason to reject the Keystone XL pipeline. New rule, feds must take future sea level rise into account. Extreme weather whiplash from record snow in Boston to record drought in San Francisco. Plus,
that's one reason why I don't think they can avoid this question in a way that they have in previous campaigns.
Majority of Americans, including Republicans, now want action on global warming.
All of that action and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
When you get the AFL-CIO against you, when you get the Teamsters against you because you're taking extreme positions on pipelines that actually make the environment safer, that's denying science.
Wait a minute. Is that Joe Scarborough?
Yep.
Did he just say opposition to the Keystone XL pipeline was extreme?
Yep.
Did he say it's better for the environment?
Yeah.
And then he said those who oppose it are denying science.
That's right.
And that was on MSNBC.
Yeah.
The supposedly liberal news network.
Right.
Right. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, 3 hours of Republican Joe Scarborough every morning on MSNBC means that's the liberal network. So you've got your work cut out for you today.
Yes, I do.
Before you begin, however, I want to welcome aboard Green News Report's newest affiliate partner, FYI Nation Network. Glad to have you guys on board. Glad to be in the FYI Nation. Check them out at FYINation.com.
Welcome to the club, guys.
Okay, Desi, with all of that out of the way, what do you have for us today?
Big news in the Keystone XL pipeline fight. This was President Obama back in June 2013.
National interest will be served only if this project does not significantly exacerbate the problem of carbon pollution.
The Environmental Protection Agency just gave Obama that reason to reject the controversial project, saying on Tuesday that the pipeline from Canada, quote, represents a significant increase in greenhouse gas emissions.
Why is it suddenly now significant?
The EPA says that the current crash in oil prices means that building the proposed pipeline will be vital for Canadian tar sands developers, and that will increase production, and that will increase emissions, more than what would otherwise occur if the pipeline weren't built.
So the prices are low, therefore Canada has to pump out more tar sands, therefore it's going to significantly exacerbate the problem of global warming.
That's right. Rail transport for the developers becomes uneconomical at these low oil prices.
So now they really need this pipeline more than ever, and yet it can cause more damage than ever, according to the EPA.
That's right.
Don't tell Joe Scarborough.
It's not the end of the process yet. The president still has to make his final determination, but this is a significant development. Meanwhile, while the Republican majority in Congress was distracted by legislation to force construction of the pipeline,
Legislation that will be vetoed.
that's right, President Obama quietly made a major change to federal policy last week. He issued an executive order saying from now on, all federally funded projects must include future sea level rise in planning and construction.
What does that mean?
That's to ensure that tax dollars aren't wasted on repeatedly repairing projects that are only going to flood again and again with climate change raising sea levels.
So they must take that into account before they begin a new project.
Before they can even approve a project, if they want to have any federal funding.
There goes Obama being a tyrant again.
An emerging consensus on climate change. A new New York Times poll finds that an overwhelming majority of the American public, and this is including half of Republicans, accept climate science and support government action to curb global warming. 2/3 in the poll say they're less likely to support any candidate that denies global warming. That is set to be a major issue in the 2016 campaign.
So this is a real problem for Republican presidential candidates. Half of their party wants action, but the bulk of the base, who they have to win over to even get the nomination, has been conned into believing climate change isn't even happening.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a minefield for them.
Nice way to put it.
Finally, wild weather whiplash. Boston was hit over the weekend with the second major storm in a week, setting the record for the snowiest 7-day period in the city's history, getting a whole season's worth of snow in just 10 days. But it's the opposite case for the city of San Francisco that recorded no rain for the month of January for the first time ever in 165 years. Nothing. Zero. That's it.
It was funny. I was seeing right-wingers on Twitter pointing to the record snow in Boston to say, that proves there's no global warming. Good luck with folks like that in the Republican presidential primary.
Yeah.
For much more on all of the stories we covered today and the ones we couldn't get to, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. While you're there, please remember to make a donation to help the Green News Report stay on your public airwaves. Don't count on Joe Scarborough to educate the public. Find us and follow us on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Please come to Boston for the springtime. I'm staying here with some friends and they've got lots of room.
The most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show.
So the first Republican out of the box office there in Iowa, according to the Des Moines Register, Scott Walker. Scott Walker is the first presidential hopeful setting up an office there. He leads the pack. In fact, he actually leads the polling, which just blows my mind that Scott Walker is leading the polling there in Iowa for the White House. And maybe I don't know. Maybe it would be a good thing to have him run than maybe anybody else. Then you could, I don't know. Just frustrating. Also, the Move On people have released a poll that Elizabeth Warren should run. And I wish at some point, they just take the message. Anyway, here to talk about what's going on in Washington, D.C. and around the world, Ellen Ratner, Talk Radio News Service. Ellen, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you so much.
So Scott Walker, first guy out of the box, huh?
He sure did. And I have to tell you that he, a lot of people think that it's going to be him versus Jeb Bush, that Jeb Bush's people did not count on this.
Wow. I got to be honest. I didn't count on it either. This kind of surprised me because he's not even really all that popular inside of Wisconsin.
Well,
but when you got Koch brothers,
they see that a person wins for president, and
They become an awful lot more popular.
well, and they see themselves as president of the United States. They win for office, etc.
What do you think of this push to get Elizabeth Warren to run? I got to be honest. There's part of me that goes, she doesn't want to do it. I don't think, and I think she's happy where she's at. Why the wasted resource? Let's go after somebody like Bernie, who I think wants to run.
Bernie would like to run, but Elizabeth Warren's got the poll numbers.
Yeah. Well, I guess.
I think she's young. She's attractive.
So, are you in the run Warren run camp?
Yeah. Hillary Clinton, I would consider her somebody I know very well and like.
Okay.
But politics-wise, I'm more in her camp.
Okay, good. Let's move along.
How about you?
I'm a Bernie person, but I wouldn't mind seeing Elizabeth Warren. I think Hillary will be another bad Democrat. Just my thought. I think it's much along the line of Bill and Obama. I'm not thrilled with a lot of the policies, and I think she's more centrist than I would like her to be.
Well, for sure. I mean, I'm a lefty, so what can I say?
Yep. And I'm probably somewhere probably not as far, but I'm definitely farther left than I think Hillary. If that's how you have to gauge things.
Right. Okay.
So there you go. Pipeline. I guess the House just passed a bill. I guess the Senate already passed their bill.
Well, they did, but the two bills don't seem to agree with each other.
Okay. It's being reported that this sets up a big veto thing. So interesting.
Well, they don't have enough, so it's veto proof.
Right. But this is again more of that stuff that isn't going to get done that we're spending a lot of time on that we should be doing other things as well.
For sure. And I think, look, this is, we are already into the 2016 campaign. That's all people care about. And it's just crazy. Nothing's getting done. We're not getting this pipeline issue done. We're not getting what the president wants done. I'm not sure I agree with it, but we're not getting that done.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, I've said from the beginning, I could support the pipeline if you built it to Chicago, refined it there, and the oil stayed here in the U.S., and it actually brought prices down here. And then you use some of the money to fix the things you're going to destroy, and we don't have all these external costs picked up by citizens and taxpayers. I might be okay with it, but shipping it out into the industry that's going to really do nothing to help us, I just don't think is a good idea.
Well, I listen, I don't either. And there's a lot of Democrats that are really objecting to a lot of the trade deals. It's going to be very interesting because it's not united as a party as the Republicans sometimes think it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. But this sets up the veto, and we'll see what the messaging out of that is going to be. And I hope he sticks to what he says and he's going to veto it. Let's move along. I understand we're going to war again.
Well, the president says that he has the authorization for this war, even if they don't pass this new thing. He wants us to speak with one voice, and that's what the president is saying.
Yeah. And what are the details of this? We're going after ISIL, and I guess the president says they're going to lose. All right. I like the rhetoric. If we're going to spend billions of dollars, we might as well win, right?
And the issue is, of course, as our friend Dwight Eisenhower said, beware the industrial complex.
Right.
And he's right that there is not. Although they'll give lip service to the fact that we have to agree on things and there has to be a diplomatic solution. That's what they were saying about Syria. As you know, that isn't how things really work.
Yeah, but my other part of this is, I saw the "we will win." Can you define what winning is?
Well, winning is to make sure that they don't come here. That's what I think.
Okay, well, then that's winning. Then we need to define that, because winning could mean we're going to be there forever now. I understand there's a 3-year sunset on this request, right?
Right. It's going to be 3 years.
All right, and that'll be whoever the next president is going to be. That'll be his mess to deal with as well.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. Yay, more war, more. I guess we need the manufacturing job. So that's a start, I guess. I guess there was a BuzzFeed interview on the.
Yeah, there was. And, the president was talking about his Affordable Health Care Act, and he gives Staples as an example. But Staples, of people who were letting go or whatever, Staples says, hey, we were going to let people go. The Affordable Health Care has nothing to do with this.
So what about the change.org position that has, petition that has people going, I'm in the middle of a transaction and the manager comes and says, clock out right now or you're fired because you're going to go a minute over 25 hours. It's a nice rhetoric to say, oh, no, we're going to do this anyway.
Well, that is nice rhetoric. I'm not so sure it's true.
Yeah. What's true, that they were punched out in the middle of a transaction?
Yeah, maybe that happened once. Maybe you have a bad manager, but I don't see that as happening.
Yeah,
do you?
Well, no, actually, I do. You
do?
As a matter of policy, to not let people go over 25 hours.
Well, I think they're trying to do that, but I can't imagine they're coming up to people in the middle of a transaction.
No, I can't. You put out that directive. And you don't have any training or any, you're always going to get some overzealous idiot to go, it's absolute law. And my bonus is based on it. I've dealt with so many of these situations and seen so much insanity that nothing surprises me anymore.
Well, nothing would surprise me, but I just, as a regular thing that it happens all the time, I don't see it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure down the road at some point somebody will bring another lawsuit like the one I talked about today in New York with Papa Johnny's, who the franchisee is $800,000 in wage theft, but that's a whole other thing. Let's move along. What's going on in Yemen?
Well, in Yemen, it's interesting because, of course, we had to pull out of the embassy there, and things were getting very iffy, and other countries helped us, and so now we're running the Yemen embassy from a different country or countries. And as they said, it has been a hotbed of various kinds of nefarious terrorist activity that we still have boots on the ground there in terms of our military.
So let me ask you this, because, the Department of Homeland Security's funding hasn't gone through. Is it going to have any impact on what's going on in Yemen? I mean, they're going to be shifting money around if it doesn't happen, because at some point it has to, right?
Right. Well, yes, I would agree. I mean, at some point, there does need to have some impact. There is impact. And the president said part of the reason that they're actually going, and I want to go back to this, to his request for, this sort of renewed request of his, is that without it, there is the possibility of spending a lot of time and a lot of money and expending American lives.
It just blows my mind that this was something that after 2001, all the Republicans wanted, if I remember right. And now we've got the situation where...
Well, now they're anything that the president suggests, they're not supporting.
And that's the really messed up part about all this. Just insane. And finally, will the world turn tomorrow? Will liberalism live on? Is there a future for people on the left now that Jon Stewart has announced not coming back?
Well, there may not be a future for some people. 25% of millennials feel that they get their news from The Daily Show.
Wow.
I mean, that's a staggering number. And that's where they get their news. They don't watch Brian, whatever his name is.
Not a big fan of Brian Williams?
Yeah. I've never seen him.
No?
No, I don't watch evening news.
Yeah, I've seen commercials for it.
Right, but I've never seen him do his thing.
Wow. Okay. Well, neither have I, but I've heard of him a lot, especially now with this whole made up story. And the question is could it be something he believed actually happened? Kind of in his defense.
Well, yes, but what I wonder about, honestly, is the situation with not just that this is that he also may have misrepresented what happened after Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I was in the French Quarter 2 weeks after Hurricane Katrina. I saw the damage, and there wasn't much. There was a lot of damage in other parts of New Orleans, horrible things, but somehow the French Quarter got pretty spared. They had a couple inches of water, 2-3 inches of water.
Well, as I understand, it's because that was the area that was they were on higher ground, right?
Right, exactly.
I mean,
And as we always say in Mississippi, where I have a project, or had a project, don't anymore, Katrina was, in Mississippi, was a God-made disaster, and New Orleans was a man-made disaster because of the levees.
Yeah, no, I mean, they had been saying for years they should have been reinforcing those. And as the one guy told me, when the levees broke and all that water came in, the levees then acted as kind of a big soup bowl. And you had this massive mess of all of these chemicals, because there are a lot of chemical plants around there, and fuel and all of this stuff that just kind of cooked in this big soup bowl until it dissipated.
Exactly.
Horrible. Ellen, always great talking with you. I understand you're heading to Sudan.
I'm heading to South Sudan on Saturday.
I wish you
I'll
safe
try and
travels.
give you guys a call from there.
I wish you safe travels and nothing but the best.
A little bit of a sabbatical. Can you imagine?
Yeah, well, like I don't know why you said you like it, and I'm glad you do. But bless you. I wish you the best.
I love the weather.
Yeah, you've said I'm not a big hot weather guy, but I wish you the best. Thanks so much, Ellen.
Thank you so much.
Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, this is your World in Tooth. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, with the Talk Radio News Service. United Nations reform. There are few issues talked about so much, but which are acted on so little. After all, why is the UN the way it is? For an experiment in world government, the status quo is about as enshrined as it gets. The UN Security Council, for instance, structures its power around 5 of World War II's victors, not the largest economies, populations, or militaries of the 21st century. Yet the current prospects for reform are bleak, with reform drives by both the Secretary General and the members of the General Assembly seemingly going nowhere. Enter the Elders, a group of 12 thought leaders from around the world established by Nelson Mandela. Its members include former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan and Jimmy Carter. Over the weekend, the group called for 4-point UN reform, including expanding the Security Council, forcing its veto-wielding members to publicly explain their vetoes, lending a greater voice to civil society in consultations, and opening up the election process for the Secretary General.
Most of the elders have had high positions too in the UN.
Leslie Ann Knight is the CEO of the Elders.
It's because of their passionate love and belief in the United Nations that they have launched this encouraging statement around strengthening and making the UN fit for purpose.
Knight says the Elders aren't debating reform in the abstract. They're keenly aware of human suffering around the world and think reform could reduce that suffering.
If the Security Council had not been quite so deadlocked through veto use by the P5 powers, I think the elders firmly believe more progress could have been made in bringing peace to both Syria, and we may not have got to the situation we are now in with the Ukraine.
For more global news headlines, visit talkradionews.com.
After the Supreme Court's democracy-mugging decree that corporations can dump unlimited amounts of their shareholders' money into our election campaigns, a guy named Larry sent an email to me that perfectly summed up what had just been done to us. Big money has plucked our eagle. Thanks to the court's freakish Citizens United ruling, the Koch brothers have amassed an unprecedented $900 million electioneering fund, making them the godfathers of Tea Party Republicanism. Thus, such presidential wannabes as Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, and Scott Walker are shamelessly scurrying to kiss the Koch ring and pledge fealty to the Brotherhood's extremist plutocratic agenda. But big money is not only corrupting candidates, it's also greatly diminishing voter participation in what has become a made-for-TV farce. The biggest chunk of cash spent by Koch Inc. will go right into a mind-numbing squall of ads. They will not explain why we should vote for so-and-so, but instead will be nauseatingly negative attack ads, trashing the candidates the Koch syndicate opposes. Worse, voters will not even be informed that the Kochs paid for this garbage, since the Supreme Court says they can run secret campaigns, laundering money through front groups to keep voters from knowing what special interests are really behind the attacks. This is Jim Hightower saying, "We saw the impact of secret, unrestricted corporate money in last year's midterm elections. It produced a blight of negativity, a failure of the system to address the people's real needs, an upchuck factor that kept nearly 2/3 of the people from voting, a rising alienation of the many from the political process, and a Congress owned by corporate elites." The Koch machine spent about $400 million to get those results 2 years ago. This time, they'll spend more than twice that.
To get more of Jim Hightower's populist take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to, visit www.hightowerlowdown.org.
You load 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments? Something on your mind, you can email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any portion of the program, get the podcast there at the website. Get the app on your smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. Interesting news out of Kansas. And every time I talk about Kansas, it's what the hell is wrong with Kansas? I'm shocked. I'm amazed. I'm mind blown that they reelected Sam Brownback Mountain. And the reason I call him Brownback Mountain, and I've done that for a number of years, even when he was Senator Brownback Mountain, obviously the movie Brokeback Mountain comes to mind, because I see him as another one of these homophobes who everything they can possibly do. And there's part of me that goes, much like my thought of Rick Santorum. There's this closeted part of them that they despise. It's that self-loathing. Well, I see Brownback. I see Brownback Mountain in the same light. Although today he revoked an executive order from 2007, and what that 2007 executive order did is said you can't discriminate against somebody because of their gender identity or their sexual orientation. As you know, and we've talked about it here on the program. In fact, we've had the very first person who was openly fired for being openly gay. On the program, talking about back in the 90s when it happened to him. In this state, you can be fired for anything, really, unless they call you old or call you a racial name or something along those lines. Something that's federally protected. Sexual orientation is not. And I would have to imagine, and this is the other part of this, and I've waited for it to happen. But I would have to imagine that a gay couple or a gay business owner could fire someone for being straight. I would think, you like women, how dare you? So I guess there's that, which is why I thought this sexual orientation idea was fine. Maybe we shouldn't even be talking about it. Get it out of the workplace. Keep it in your house. Do what you got to do. But he now has revoked that executive order, and he said this executive order ensures that the state employees enjoy the same civil rights as all Kansans, without creating additional protected classes, as the previous order did. Because tying someone to a fence and beating them and leaving them there to die, we don't need to protect those people. And I know. But Rick, they went to jail. Yeah. But why did they go after this kid? And that's the part of this that really infuriates me. And for people like Brownback Mountain and people like Santorum and the rest of them, I got to be honest. These people scare me. And it scares me when you have a state like Kansas, who used to have fairly progressive leanings, to really pursue this idiocy. Now, understand their economy is in shambles because of this guy. They're the new Pennsylvania. Congratulations, Kansas. You're now Pennsylvania. They've given away their job base because, hey, here's a whole bunch of money. Please come. Hasn't really helped. They've given a lot of money away. Hasn't really helped. Unemployment's not all that much better, but they've taken money out of the schools and large amounts of money. And they continue to cut from education and higher ed, all because they're following the Corbett kind of plan, the right-wing plan, the corporate plan of, hey, give us a boatload of money and screw those kids. They won't be in the workforce for 20 years. You'll be out of office by then. Don't worry about it. They won't hold you accountable. But he ran on this idea that, well, we need to fight government intrusion, fight the federal government into our lives, which you go, hey, dum-dum, be a decent human being. I mean, yesterday I talked a little bit about the woman who was fired because she got divorced. I mean, is that where we're going? Keep the government out of my life and let private corporations beat the hell out of me? Really? It's insane. It's nuts. It's crazy. But this is conservative world. This is where they want to take us. Anyway, if you missed any portion of the program, as I said, thericksmithshow.com. Get the Rick Smith Show app on your smartphone. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. If you've got any thoughts, things, hey, I liked, I didn't like, you can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. We will see you back here tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email at thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
It's coming like time.